Hello, hello. Oh, it did pop up on screen. All right. Hello, hello, everyone. Where is my mic? Good. Hey, Miss Kelly, no problem. Mrs. Kelly, no problem. We appreciate you. Who is all live right now? A few people. Actually, kind of a lot of people, huh? Yeah. All right. So we will get into it. Man, I am always super excited to talk about DNA. Ever since we started digging into it, I swear this DNA is the golden goose egg. It is. I'm telling you, this DNA is the golden goose egg in this. I need to pop my chair up.
It is the most important piece of the case, I think. For court.
Okay. Right in the center of the screen. Bam. There we go. Yeah, no, and I've said it from the beginning. I'll do the quick intro real quick. All right. So welcome everybody to the True Crime Talk Show, which, oh man, I'm not gonna spill the beans for the picture that we have coming, but we have a couple really cool pictures that I'm super excited for. But anyways, welcome to the show. This is the True Crime Talk Show, the one and only. There isn't another one out there like us. And we are brought to you by Thought Riot Podcast. And you can find us on any podcast platform like these couple here. As you can see, we have the True Crime Talk Show by Thought Riot Podcast on all the podcast platforms. We also have Thought Riot, the True Crime and Criminal Culture Podcast on all the podcast platforms as well. This one here is Apple. This one here is Spotify. We are also on it's creating a shine on that one picture. You should just turn it around and put it on the wood. But we're on every podcast platform out there. We've been in the top 5 in 3 different countries over the last 6 months, which is incredible. So we're on podcast platforms out there we didn't even know we were on, but it's awesome. We love that people love listening to us. And welcome to the show. We are on every social media there is out there. And I probably should have had this one pulled up, but our main social media you can find us at that if you're not getting alerts from YouTube, which seems like an everybody problem, then the best place to get those alerts is going to be Patreon.com/Thought Riot Podcast. And we do have a free tier on there. So don't hop on there and feel like you're obligated to pay. We don't want people paying us unless you can afford it. Like, we don't believe anybody should stretch their wallet in a way where it's going to put anybody in jeopardy. If you want to give, awesome. We really appreciate that. And there are some benefits to helping us get to a full-time position, private chats, one-on-one type conversation and video about cases, things like that you can look into. But if you can't, we still want you there. We still appreciate you, and you are still a thought writer. So anyways, you can find us on any other social media at /Thought Riot Podcast, except for Twitter. On Twitter, Twitter, aka X, is /Thought Riot Pod, 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 Thought Riot Pod. So check us out on there, and welcome to the show.
Yes. Welcome to the show.
What do you want to share?
Nothing. And thank you, AR and J Ray. That's so sweet. We appreciate all of you. So yeah, I think the DNA is the most important part of
Yeah, give
this
a
case
recap.
in court. So
What we just
Rec-
watched real quick and what
Okay.
we'll get into.
So we just finished the premiere of a clip about DNA from the podcast, and I kind of focused on the lack of legalities surrounding forensic genealogy. There aren't any besides 2 states that have passed laws. I actually just finished watching Get a Clue before stream, and he said it was Maryland and another state. And I couldn't find that with a quick Google search. So I'm gonna have to look more into it. But that's it. And then we have the D.O.J. interim policy, which came out after the Golden State Killer case was solved, and then the FBI, a group of agents, decided, well, let's see what this IGG is all about. And they basically took on 12 cold cases, cut their teeth on cold cases, which is why this technique, forensic genealogy, is considered a cold case technique, though it is not. They cut their teeth on those 12 cases and solved them all, and basically gathered data from it. How much DNA do we need? What's the quality of DNA that we need? And kind of figured out the process. And with that information, they wrote curriculum to teach other law enforcement and FBI agents how to use this technique. And then they came out with the interim policy. And in the interim policy, there's a few things that I find really interesting. For one, there's no reason to follow it. There's no incentive to follow it.
Well, duh.
There's like zero accountability. It's not a law.
That's like what I said in the video, where look, if somebody's like me, and I feel like a lot of scientists are like me, and I you know what's funny is scientists have this idea and this rap that they're like super nerdy people. But what's interesting is science is literally one of the most punk rock topics out there. Like science doesn't follow anybody's social rules. They follow the rules of the hypotheses, tests, and laws of nature. You know what I mean? So you tend to have a lot of scientists that are very like anti-authority. So if you have someone like me and I'm told, hey, here is a super long report of rules that aren't really rules. They're suggestions. They're just best practices. Like if you follow them, we think you should follow them. But if you don't follow them, it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. I'm literally going to throw it in the trash. I don't even think I'm going to take the time to read it.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying, but this interim policy isn't necessarily for scientists, and that's not who's doing forensic genealogy.
But it's about science.
Yeah, but that's not who's doing it. That's our automatic assumption, is that, oh, experts are doing this. No, they are not.
Yeah.
There are experts who do it, but there's also a lot of cops, prosecutors, and people who have just went through basically a training course over Zoom to do this.
Right.
And
I get that. I was just starting with science because that's a whole nother issue that you're bringing up now, like a completely different issue. The fact that we're, one, expect scientists to follow this, but two, we are now allowing anybody that has absolutely no authority and or training to also do this.
Yeah, they have training. It's just not very great training. So that curriculum that
bad training still called training?
That those agents, I don't know, that those agents, made. They made this curriculum. Well, as soon as they made it, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So and he said it was super difficult teaching people on Zoom. So a lot of the people using this were taught on Zoom and had a really hard time learning it. So, but yeah, I just find it really interesting how forensic genealogy came about. Learning that history from that ex FBI agent, which, like I said, I'll link those videos in our Discord. Probably after we hop off here. So if you guys want to go check it out, definitely do. But it was really interesting learning that background from literally like the trailblazer who started it all.
Yeah.
And he wasn't an expert. Like, he was learning it as he was going. As
Right.
a lot of these experts are. Like Steve Mercer, that lawyer we saw testify on the stand, he learned all this stuff from being a lawyer involved in the case and then going and training with experts. And that's how he became an expert. So
yeah, I guess that goes back to something I brought up the other day. What classifies you as an expert? Because in my opinion, what I feel like I'm seeing the more I look into this IGG stuff is like a bunch of self-taught people, which there's nothing wrong with self-taught people. I think learned knowledge in any capacity is still knowledge, right? But in order to be considered an expert, in order to be considered an authority on any matter, there has to be a standardization which places your knowledge in an authoritative position, meaning you know more than a bulk and or large group of other people. So what is making them experts?
right.
You know?
And what is the incentive to follow the policy that's supposed to regulate the manner and how they use this? If it's just a policy and this, what they're collecting never makes it to court because it's only supposed to be a lead. Like the way we see it being used, at least just at face value, okay? Face value from the documentation is like literally by the book of the interim policy that they collected it, okay, from the thing or whatever. We still don't know what qualified them to be able to use this because it's either they have no more
aren't.
leads or they had to have had no leads, or there had to have been some kind of public safety risk to an extreme where they saw this as okay. You know, and then they take that and then, you know, they do all the things, okay? And they compare STR to STR, which basically circumvents the IGG entirely. That's why it's just a tip. Like they get the tip from that, and then they compare the actual suspect's DNA that they get from him, collect from him through the buccal swab to the original sample. So there was like, it's just a tip. And that's what the interim policy says to do.
Yeah.
So that is by the book, but they're not making it discoverable. And it says nothing about having to make it discoverable in court, but I think it absolutely should be. It should always be discoverable. And Get a Clue's video today solidified that for me too, because some of the stuff he said that the lawyers would need to validate the sample's integrity.
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, we are talking about two different situations here. However, to be clear, both issues, both types of testing, whether it is IgG and STR, they tend to come they tend to come hand in hand, right? Using Idaho 4 as the direct reference here, you have DNA they claim they found on the scene, and they didn't know whose it was because they didn't get a hit in CODIS or anything like that. So then they ran the IgG and started connecting dots, and this dot and that dot, this dot, that dot, this dot, that dot. Ultimately came to a conclusion from what they say was the Idaho 4 key suspect right now, Bryan Coburger. Then they pick him up and or arrest him because they supposedly had enough information, enough investigative data to prove that he is likely the suspect in this case. Once they pick him up, they get his DNA, run it against what they claim is their STR profile. However, one of the big concerns that we're talking about here is both of those testings are not being ran by experts. So let's just track this idea real quick. Let's stick to STR, which is your traditional DNA testing. That would be a bodily fluid. In this case, it's a whole other issue being touch DNA. But let's just say there was a bodily fluid left on site there, and they picked up Bryan Kohberger. They tested the bodily fluid, and he had never been arrested before and not in CODIS, which is super strange to me anyways, because he was in a law enforcement program, and law enforcement is put into CODIS. So I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But anyways, they have his profile, and then they test his STR profile. That test, okay, which we watched that video before on live stream, that test gets sent to science experts, okay? And they're law enforcement scientists. They run the test, and then they send the results, and these results are being read by non-experts and making comparisons and taking into account prosecutors' input. And this is where you get like the blobs on the screen and a prosecutor saying, okay, but wait, I understand that we have 6 markers, 2 blobs, and 2 unknown, but those 2 blobs could be matches. So let's not say it's 60%. Let's say it's 80%.
Well, and the problem is, the problem is, so we got from Blum's articles that it was 20 cells. Okay. Remember, 20
less
cells.
than 20, but yeah.
That makes it not repeatable.
Correct.
So if there are blobs, they can't be like, okay, the machine could have had dust in it. Let's just run it again. Let's check to see if that is signal or if it's just a blob, like it was nothing at all. There was nothing there. They can't do that.
They can't do that.
Yes, that's exactly right. We know from Bicka Barlow's declaration that it was partial and ambiguous.
Yep.
Which is rough, man. That's really rough. That statement was hidden in there, and that's rough if that is true, and I assume it is. But what I just found out from Get a Clue's
and that's
video,
not talked about enough.
It's not. But you know what I just found out from Get a Clue's video?
What?
They can run partials through CODIS. It has to meet a certain criteria. It has been said all over that you can't run partials through CODIS.
I don't think you can get a confirmative, a confirmation match, meaning it won't hold up in court, but you can put the markers in there. It's just not enough markers for the result to matter.
I mean, we talked about this a lot. We didn't think that they could put a partial in CODIS, and it had been said a lot that they can't, but they can, but it has to meet a certain amount of markers for them to be able to run that partial.
Yeah, we have talked about this a lot. And this is what we talked about. At least this is how I was referring to it as, is there's no reason why you can't put even, let's say they're using 10 markers. There's no reason why you couldn't put 1 marker in a computer, but the amount of hits that you're going to get is just going to be an absurd amount. And sure, that means a match, but you're not going to be able to generate a single match. So I think you can put any amount in CODIS. A CODIS is just a computer, a software of profiles connected to suspects and or people that have been, owned by the state or feds or whatever. So I think you could do that. It's just, it wouldn't meet the regulations in a court of law.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. You never said this before.
I think I did, but I could be wrong. Maybe I didn't.
But yeah, you can run partials through CODIS. I don't remember how many markers you need, but it has to be a certain amount to be able to run it through there, which I found interesting. And also in that video, we talked about a short interview. It was a pretty short one. Bicka Barlow just did an interview on a channel, and I'll try to mention the channel here in a second. But she did an interview because she's going to be doing a presentation at some kind of event this January 19th. I'm going to try to pull it up so everybody can see, so that we can be on the lookout for this presentation, because it sounds like it's going to be good, like real good.
Is there background music? Because I'd love to show the video so people have a good understanding of just like who Bicka Barlow is and why she is literally the leading expert, you guys. at least in the US, possibly the world on some of these topics. She has been fighting for advocacy and rights around DNA and or IgG since the 90s. I'm pretty sure I saw a video of her when the recordings were like super bad quality from the 90s, but Malia will pull that up now. But yeah, so what's insane, you guys? Oh my gosh, are my eyes deceiving me? Ian, I thought you've been gone.
I thought he croaked.
I thought
like
you were
a
missing
frog.
in action. Oh my gosh.
Like
and
a
to
s-
come in and just drop 10 memberships, like Ian just walked in the door, Mike dropped and walked out. Bam.
Prisoner got out of his cage.
Yes.
Hey, Crime Sleuthin', good to see you.
Prisoner of the chat.
All right, I send it.
Yeah, we definitely aren't a couple, but I appreciate the thought. We've just known each other for a long time.
Croaked like a frog. You know, he's a frog.
Yes. Fresno, California, or Fresno, Canada, and illness. Yeah, I've been super sick too. So anyways, I am super stoked that you're here. We appreciate that the 10 memberships, and yeah, super glad to have you back. Absolutely. But yeah, did you happen to find that video, or did I sidetrack you?
I said I sent it.
Oh, you did send it?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, you guys, if there's a topic out there's a couple that I could just rant nonstop on because I believe in it so much. One of them is the oversight and the need for it in our justice system. Another one is police corruption. And another one is the DNA, the DNA standardization that we need in our justice systems, and yeah, in our justice system. So, and that includes like the lack of touch DNA standardization, the fact that we have our own military that does not allow touch DNA. They're like, no way, dude. It's a pseudoscience. One of the first videos that we did on DNA, I did a ton of research into what justice systems allow touch DNA and which ones don't. It sounds like something just downloaded. And which ones don't. And the military had two experts that were talking about touch DNA, and both of them were stomping all over touch DNA, how bad it is, how unreliable it is, how it's a complete and total pseudoscience, that maybe one day it will be in a reliable place, but it is not currently in a reliable place. So the fact that we allow it, like, hey, we're not gonna mistreat our military boys because they're government and working for the government, but we're more than willing to mistreat our general public and population. Like, dude, that rubs me the wrong way, bro.
That guy, which I believe his name is Steve Bush, the ex FBI guy. Yeah, Steve Bush, 19 years in the FBI. He resigned to pursue basically a company, like to build a software called Indago, that's basically to basically add more, like, what do you
oversight?
Call it? No, not oversight.
What?
No, automation. More like,
I mean, that's
software.
That's a kind of oversight, depending on what that is. Automation is like an automatic.
It's a computer doing it for you.
I know. That's oversight. That is reducing the amount of people that touch a situation. Computers are oversight, and the more automation, the more reliability and accountability you have behind it, because you're taking out the flawed decision making of human beings. So if we can punch in a code and say, hey, when we're automatically running STR and IgG and all these things, and these are the markers that it needs to meet, otherwise it does not populate as a match, that's good. That's oversight. And then we can hire a person, a software engineer, or a single expert to then just verify that these results are right. You have a computer that's doing it, and then you have the verification after. I consider that oversight. Oversight is reducing the control and or increasing the accountability around these topics.
I guess that's a good point. I didn't think about it like that. But yeah, he went on to pursue that. But what were you talking about before that? Because you made me lose my train of thought.
But I think I've been talking about oversight the entire time. Before that was the military.
Okay. So he did mention that when they first came out with this IgG stuff, he said there was a lot of people, and he said it was a vocal minority though, but there was quite a few people within law enforcement, within the government, who were like, heck no, this is government overreach. This is not okay. We don't want this. And he said, that's why he kept talking about how he thinks we could get people on board, and that people typically are on board with forensic genealogy as long as we're honest and transparent and doing it the right way. But I mean,
yeah,
that's my problem with it.
But
so
we have to take honesty out of the equation, though, because that's the big thing that I feel like there's so many people out there. And one of the reasons why I talk about this all the time is to try and close this gap is, one person will have a subjective opinion to a situation and they aren't being dishonest. But then you have another person that has their own subjective fact that will look at that person's opinion and feel like they're being dishonest. And there go, disruption and distrust in our community. When both people are being honest, they just have a difference of opinion. And that's why that new video that's coming out talking about how facts, everyone's searching facts because they want the ultimate truth, but facts are flawed. Facts are subjective. A fact, by definition, is just a truth based on somebody's own experience, opinion, and or reality. Right?
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. And hello, Kimmy.
Detectives have a new tool when it comes to solving cold cases: genetic genealogy. But genetic genealogy is not a silver bullet, and its use can raise important issues for criminal attorneys. Hello, I'm Jeff M. Brown, legal writer with the State Bar of Wisconsin. I'm here today with attorney Bicka Barlow to discuss.
Hey, Jeff, if you ever watch us watching this, Jeff, who's on the screen right here, you need to reach out to us because that camera shaking is like, oh, awful. Someone's literally holding the camera.
Her presentation on genetic genealogy at the State Bar's annual Forensic Justice Institute on January 19, 2024. To register for the Forensic Justice Institute, please click on a link in the video summary below. Welcome, Bicka. Thanks for being here today. So you have a master's degree in genetics in addition to your law degree. You've worked on issues at the intersection of law.
This is the GOAT herself, you guys, okay? The GOAT. If you don't know, greatest of all time, GOAT.
And science for 25 years. You're going to be talking about genetic genealogy in the legal system at the Institute, as I mentioned. Can you start by just explaining what is genetic genealogy? Specifically, what is investigative genetic genealogy?
Well, investigative genetic genealogy is a term that's been applied to the use of standard genetic genealogy techniques to the investigation of missing persons, i.e. like Jane Doe's, as well as identifying individuals who are suspects in crimes. and specifically genetic genealogy uses DNA-based testing as the starting point.
So, for instance, if a corpse is found, genetic genealogy can be used to identify who that person was, or, as in the case of the Golden State Killer and some other cold cases that people may have heard about, a genetic profile can be built, and you might be able to find someone who is, say, a second cousin to the person who ultimately committed the crime. Is that accurate?
Mostly accurate. There's a lot of misinformation out there about how this works, and that's what I'm trying to dispel by doing trainings. And one of them is that you don't generally identify a particular person using genetic genealogy. You identify a lineage or a group of individuals who may or may not be related to the person of interest.
I see.
So it's different.
The goat's got a cat. Did you see her kitty back there?
Wow.
There's just a little tail.
Bicka Barlow, you mean blind testing? Wow, what a theory.
Look, she's got a fish too. And a little like cycling bike back there. She's a fit lady.
Would you expect anything else from the goat?
Probably not.
Different than what we think of as the traditional cold case search.
I see. Well, what are some of the issues with its use other than that one that you'll be discussing in your presentation at the Forensic Justice Institute?
Well, the focus of the presentation is going to be the emerging legal issues around the use of the technology, because as many other DNA techniques, this is being rushed into, in my opinion, into the legal system without much scrutiny.
Mine too.
And the issues that I am focused on right now are discovery of information, the documentation of these genetic genealogies.
That's what we're saying. The discovery, the documentation, the lack of in the Coburger case, when we learned it was just handwritten notes from the FBI.
Yeah, dude.
The fact that they are not even planning to allow this to be discoverable. Messed up.
That's what I'm saying
and
too.
She sees an issue in it too. And go figure, because she has a law degree. She's a lawyer and a genetics expert.
Yeah. And the fact that we can't convict anybody without showing them full stop every piece of evidence that was used against them to make every connection and connect every dot, the entire thing.
You absolutely should. And even if that's not normal,
like mandatory.
I've heard the argument that we don't do that.
I know we don't. And it's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why our justice system sucks. It's better than others, but it still relatively sucks.
I wouldn't go as far to say it sucks. I think we have a pretty good justice system.
Our people don't suck.
But
the system sucks.
I think we have some major flaws within the system that need worked out.
Yeah,
but
you're saying it nicer.
But Kimmy, don't worry about it. Everybody needs to take breaks sometimes. The Watts case did that to me. I had to take a break, or I was literally going to lose my mind.
Everybody does, except for me. But
because he's crazy.
Different.
Yeah. But no hard feelings ever for anybody who needs to take breaks. We're not here to hold you prisoner other than Ian. Ian is the only prisoner.
Yes, he is.
But yeah, let's continue.
He's been in my basement.
But I'm glad you're back. We missed you.
Technology searches, as well as issues that may or may not relate to the Fourth Amendment in terms of privacy rights of the individual who's in the case of someone being charged, if their privacy rights are being violated, or whether someone in their family's privacy rights are being violated. The other thing that is of interest in this, I would say, the cutting edge aspect of what I think about is the question of whether the use of these genetic databases, such as MyHeritage or GEDmatch, is being abused by law enforcement agencies to do these searches, and whether or not there is some legal challenge that a defendant can mount to that's based on maybe, for instance, a prosecutorial overreach or misconduct.
Right, because those are all privately held corporate creations, those data banks, are they not?
They're all private companies, and they all have privacy policies in place. Some allow law enforcement searches, some don't. And even the ones that allow law enforcement searching will restrict it to certain subsets of the individuals in the database who have agreed to that already.
Interesting. Well, those are all fascinating issues. It's sort of the brave new world, cutting edge of where genetic technology is going in the criminal arena, and it's something that you can learn all about at the Forensic Justice Institute. Again, on January 19th, click on the link in the video summary below to learn more and to register. I look forward to seeing you at the Institute, Becca, and thanks for your time today.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So excited to see what she's going to be doing. And what she has to say. All those things she just mentioned are going to be part of her presentation. And it's going to be fascinating. And I'm really curious, even though she's not going to talk about the Coburger case, I'm curious if any of her concerns come from the Coburger case.
I don't think it's just the Coburger
No, of
case.
course
that
not.
just has our most attention right now. But I think in almost every case that isn't a cold case, and literally, you guys, like, I don't understand if you guys know how few this has been used, but in the entire nation, for active cases, it has only been used a handful of times. For active cases, drawing connections and bringing evidence to court, it's only been a handful of times.
Yeah, the Kohberger case really is the biggest active case this has ever been used in, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the biggest cases ever. It really is. It's like gonna be up there with Casey Anthony and OJ. It really is. It already is there with the public interest. So,
and that's why we need the accountability, and that's why I hate it. I despise it when people are like, "Oh yeah, how can you talk bad?" And I say this almost every stream, but how can you talk bad about law enforcement when you're just going to be the one calling them when something's wrong? You're right. You're right. That's because I believe in law enforcement. I believe in our system, even though I believe it sucks. And I'm just a realist, and I believe that you got to admit you have a problem in order to change that problem. I believe in our law enforcement system. I believe it sucks, and I believe we can change things to make it better. And the only way to do that is to call it out when we see it and enact change. If we just pretend, walk around with our eyes covered, that nothing's wrong, then nothing changes, and it actually gets worse.
I would like to see a case named that there was too much public interest to where it made the case not solvable. Because so far, all I've seen is public interest solves cases.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
there could be an example. I'm not saying there's not. I just can't think of one. But anyway.
And human beings are flawed too. That's the thing too, is I saw a couple comments and they're like, our justice system is only as good as the people that are in it. You're right. But people are flawed in general, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Flaws come with human beings. That's actually what makes us incredible, in my opinion. And when you're looking at something from a scientific perspective, think of how many times scientists get it wrong before they get it right. I would go so far to say that they're right 1% of the time, wrong 99% of the time, right? That 99% is the important part. Not the fact that they were able to verify their hypothesis. That 99% is what they actually learned how not to do something and why not to do it and the outcome of doing it wrong in all these ways. Getting it right, that's the simple part. You know what I mean? And that should be the same when it comes to our law enforcement and justice system too, is we have the IGG coming forward. We have faulty and flawed DNA techniques where you have non-experts and prosecutors who are saying things like, yeah, you know, I know we need 7 markers, but we have 6 in a blob. That could be a marker behind that blob. Like, these are major problem issues out there. We need people that are doing these techniques blindly. Bring in an expert who has no idea what the suspect looks like, has no idea what the suspect's name is, and put a lineup of DNA matches in front of them and let them pick it out. You know what I mean? There's so many easy fixes to this issue. The problem is the fact that law enforcement doesn't want these fixes because they want to be able to maneuver, control, and nudge an investigation where they need to. And to me, that's a problem. And to me, I know that what I'm asking will mean that guilty people could get let off, but that is the only honest justice system there is. There's no way around not being perfect every time. There are going to be criminals out there that get away with their crimes, but I would rather have a small percentage of criminals that get away with their crime and have an honest justice system that we can back, believe in, and support than have a flawed justice system that has 100% conviction rate. You know what I mean? I would rather have a criminal get let out and the good guys lose than have an innocent person convicted.
I thought you always argued it's okay to sacrifice one for the many.
Yeah, but that goes in line with that argument, because by having an unjust justice system, you are tarnishing the many. You are, because you're tarnishing every single case that comes after. When you're using unjust interrogation, investigation techniques, and science, then you're ruining everybody's justice. Everybody's. And I love police. I love our lawyers. I love our prosecutors. I love our defense attorneys, but I need them to be honest. And I don't want the dishonest ones to tarnish the good names of the positive ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a bad justice system hurts everybody, for sure. I get that idea. And I also saw somebody say Kimmy said that we're in the best like policing era of all eras so far. But
Truth.
But yeah, that is true as far as like corruption and everything. But my only concern, which I think there's been a lot of accountability on cops in the past 5 years, or actually it's been more like 3, right? 3 it is when really people started going hard at police.
No, I think as long as everybody's had phones and access to the internet.
It really ramped up.
That's one of the downsides of the internet is like everybody sees everything now, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but that's just a reason why we're in one of the least corrupt eras of policing ever, but it feels like one of the most.
Right.
Because we see everything. Whereas in the 70s, you guys, it's theorized and there's statistical evidence on corruption, and it's theorized that 70% plus of the police departments and police officers were corrupt and using corrupt tactics. 70%. But nobody had a computer in their hands every day, everywhere, seeing everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was literally sitting here thinking that exact thing. Because I do feel like it looks to us to be more corrupt than it actually truly is, and I think corruption is not as common as it appears on the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I have a hard time saying it sucks. I don't think it sucks. I think that our American culture is aggressive. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we're like naturally all go-getters and aggressive. and cultures in other countries where there's less corruption, it's more laid back. I don't know. I feel like it just comes with the culture a lot of times.
Yeah. And trust me, like, I get it. I know I'm being a drama queen when I say our entire justice system sucks. I understand that.
Queen.
But it still holds true that I feel like it sucks. Do I think we're making progress? Yes. Do I feel like that progress matches the social expectations of what we need as a society? No. It is not matching that. So it sucks.
Okay.
And I say that like, I love our justice system. I do. And I appreciate every single police officer. I appreciate, every single judge. I think their jobs are horribly hard. I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, I want to be a lawyer. I think that would be fun to be a lawyer just because I love debating, but and I like the concept of our legal system being a puzzle. It's constantly like a puzzle you're trying to figure out and fix with all different types of aspects to it. But anyways, I love everybody that's included in our justice system, but that's why I feel confident saying that it sucks too. You know what I mean? Because judgment coming from a place of hatred is not judgment at all. That's what's expected. But judgment coming from a place of love and concern, that's real judgment. That is real constructive criticism.
Yep. I agree.
Maybe you just don't like the word sucks because it is aggressive. And I get that, but I could use a different word. Like, our justice system is depressing.
Okay.
Is that better? Or
I guess.
do I need a different one? Our justice system is
flawed.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a little bit softer. Mm-hmm. Our justice system is poo-poo.
Are we saying the whole justice system?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
As a whole?
I think there is systemic corruption in our justice system that can be traced back to everything from politics to corporate America to all kinds of stuff. So there are major changes that need to happen on a macro level that would start from a micro level, though. You know what I mean? Little changes, you guys, go a long way. My little change that I'm fighting today, right now, is for IgG and DNA standardization. That's it. Let's just start there. Let's start with IgG and DNA standardization.
IgG or forensic genealogy is the future. It absolutely is. It is the future of solving crime, 100%. Other than data tracking, stuff like that. So one thing I want to talk about that Steve Bush, the retired, or he's not retired actually, he resigned, but former FBI agent, talked about is that IgG is falsely, or it's just mislabeled as a cold case technique when actually it's an identity resolution technique. And he refers to the interim policy, where it talks about being able to use IgG if there is an ongoing threat to the public. And he also references a case that they just cracked when this mother and daughter started getting threats, like written threats and phone calls by this guy. And apparently what he was saying was really awful, what he was going to do to them. And law enforcement became really concerned that he was actually going to end up falling through with these threats. So they used one of the letters he sent, I'm assuming, to get touch DNA, and did IgG and found out who he was and arrested him. And and he also uses the example of, like, you find a bomb in a train station and it didn't go off. We disarmed it. Everybody's safe. Nobody got hurt, but we need to protect the public in the future and find out who did this. So that is one way of doing it, is IGG now. And in the interim policy, there's that clause now that they included that if there's an ongoing public, like a threat to public safety, they can use IGG. So we're going to start seeing this a lot more in active cases and not just murders. We're going to be seeing it in like terrorist type things, situations where people are being threatened.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I support it.
But the scary thing to me is that we have no standardization.
Exactly.
No laws. It is literally the wild, wild west, like you put on the thumbnail.
I know.
It is the wild, wild west.
I know.
We have no legalities, no laws at all to protect the public. That is terrifying. Kimmy just left a super chat.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Kimmy. The political era, the reform era, and the community era are the three eras. We're in the community era, which is exactly what Brendan is describing, with us seeing the goings on. We, the people, decide.
Yeah. And I hope we continue moving that direction, because look, like going back to the origins of our country's creation, right? I know I'm getting way macro, like I get it when we're talking about the Idaho 4 case, but it was created in a way, our justice system was created in a way, the laws, our government, everything was created in a way where the people had the power, right? So if we continue going away from this and creating separation from our law enforcement and or justice system, then we are going to continue moving into a place where we aren't going to like it, right? We need to not be standoffish when we're talking about these topics. And maybe that's why I shouldn't say our justice system sucks, but we need to come from a place of care and concern and change. And we need to have our hands in the bucket, creating that change. And, I think that the Idaho 4 case is just a really great place to start, because I think it is so blatantly obvious to everybody. There are problems here. There are things going on. I don't care if you think he's guilty. There's something going on here. I don't care if you think he's innocent. There's something going on here. There is either a secondary case that's being investigated, or these cops just really are that bad, and there's some kind of trying to smooth over the mistakes that were had. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up was a comment that somebody had left. What was it? Where was it? Where I'm not sure where it is, but I have a couple shout outs I needed to do. Dang it. I'm glad I pulled this up. But one of the people, somebody left a comment. Maybe it was Rumsey. I'm not sure who it was, but they said that they heard from somewhere at some point in this case. Now, understand that's word of mouth, right? So I'm not saying this is concrete, but they heard somewhere that you know how all the kids heard about the crime at 8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning or whatever? Okay, well, there was commentary going on out there that the police were actually called earlier in the morning at 8:30 a.m. But because that entire community is ran by the college, they first had a meeting with Scott Green, was like, we have a problem. This is about to blow up and this is going to be way out of our hands. So they had a meeting on how to best handle this situation after, they had been reached out to from the roommates or whatever. And then police approached the house. I don't think that's that far off idea.
Oh, I think that's far off.
How?
I do not think.
Who's the man in power in that town?
I don't think cops would delay EMS when they don't know what's going on inside that house,
but
and they could potentially
they
save somebody.
What if they did?
Somebody had to
Dude.
arrive to know what was going on.
No, somebody had to be there.
I don't know. I think it's far-fetched.
I don't think it's far-fetched, and I'm curious how you think it's far-fetched. There were people there, and we heard that they were texting, therefore hearing what was going on, and could have left, could have stayed there, and they could have seen the scene. Do you understand that if you would have seen that scene, you don't need to check pulse, and you can tell those people are gone? I don't think it's far-fetched at all. I think it's very possible based on the lack of information we have around that 911 call.
And it took 3 hours?
I don't know. I'm giving rough estimates of time here. I'm just giving a theory. The details, the micro details that you're talking about aren't what's important. It's the fact, could there have been a planned approach to this house after having a meeting with Scott Green, who was well aware of the situation, because we knew that kids heard about it at 8:30 a.m. That's confirmed through eyewitnesses in the area.
I don't understand the benefit of that, because when they approach the crime scene, they will quarantine it off, shut it down, and then they can have that conversation. You're literally jeopardizing the case by doing that. You
exactly.
are throwing it to the wind. Like, you are destroying any credibility or integrity, period.
Duh. And what are we seeing in this case? You're acting like there's credibility here.
But I feel like
you have a PCA with more flaws than things that are correct.
I don't know.
And all we see are bad decisions.
I don't see the benefit of that, is all I'm saying.
There doesn't have to be a benefit. You're acting like there's some like pre-existing knowledge that they knew what was going to happen. They didn't. But who's the man in charge? And do you believe that the students were texting about this crime at 8:30? Come up with another explanation.
Another explanation for the 8-hour time gap?
No, for the kids at 8:30 knowing the lack of information around a 911 call, I think this is a very plausible theory.
I think that a more plausible theory is some kind of student involvement. Or somebody was scared and needed to hide something. That's more plausible to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very good theory too. But the thing is with me though, is I can support multiple theories knowing that it's up in the air. I'm not a this or that type person where it's got to be this or it's got to be that. Okay. I can have 3 or 4 different theories that I think make sense, and including Scott Green before law enforcement approaching the house, I think is a realistic possibility. Absolutely. There was no question whether people were alive if you saw that crime scene. No question. We're talking unrecognizable injuries, 50 plus wounds.
I mean,
there is not a maybe by looking at that. Like, that's, I think anybody untrained would know that there was not somebody alive.
maybe. I just, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not co-signing the 8 hours onto my theory, you guys.
I don't know. I just don't find it plausible because I don't see the benefit in it. And I feel like you would make that decision for a very specific reason.
No.
I mean, have we
You
ever seen
wouldn't.
another single case where cops went and met with somebody to discuss a plan before they ever even approached a crime scene?
That's not a really good example because you're talking about a case where there's all firsts here.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, this whole case is all first. So how does Scott Green fit into this? I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible that Scott Green could have had pre-existing knowledge to manage the leak and information coming out because there was no question whether people were alive.
So you're
the crime
saying,
already happened,
so
right?
you're saying
so who's the man in charge in town? It's not Fry.
So you think the reason that they would have had that meeting is because the information was already out and leaking
Yes.
around town?
Yes, that they best tried to handle this situation. They had knowledge before they approached that scene of what was going on, And this is why the people that were there involved didn't have no statements or anything like that. Because what if there isn't a 911 call?
I never even thought of that though. That's interesting. Is
what
that
if there isn't a 911?
what if there isn't a 911 call? But that would have to mean Chief Fry straight up lied though.
Well, duh, they have been lying. We got who was it? Oh, I wish I remembered this as a receipt. We know that law enforcement told people that were close to this case that had important information to this trial that they were told by police, if asked questions, don't say anything or lie.
Who?
I don't remember who. I literally just said that.
Wait, who was told that though?
What?
I'm
literally
confused.
just
That
said
statement made
don't
no sense to
remember
me.
the name of the person, but they were coached by law enforcement that if they were approached by media to don't say anything or lie.
Okay.
Don't co-sign like social expectations onto police officers. Police officers are absolutely allowed to lie to mislead an investigation, knowing that a suspect could be watching. They do it all the time, every single case. There's not a single case out there where a police officer doesn't lie. I don't know why that's even brought up.
No, they can mislead the suspect. Yeah, they can do that.
No, they can straight up lie. They're
Yeah.
allowed to. Like, there's no law that says, hey, you're breaking the law if you're lying.
I mean, it makes sense for them to tell somebody, hey, when you talk to the media, don't say anything, but also don't lie. Because, like, remember the Carly Gousset case? We covered it. It hasn't been posted yet. But in that case, the mom started going on social media right away and saying things, and then went on Nancy Grace, and then went on something else, and her story changed like every time. And it made people start looking at her like, what is up with you? You had something to do with it. And she claimed she lied because the cops told her not to say anything about the active investigation.
Yeah.
So she lied.
Yeah.
If she's telling the truth about lying.
Yep.
But it made her look bad. It makes the investigation look bad. Like, going on air and lying doesn't benefit anything.
I mean, to be fair, police aren't concerned with how they look in the public's eye. That's not a factor in their decision making.
It kind of is.
No way. No way. Are you kidding me? No way. They care about being able to have a case closed with a conviction and keeping their benefactors and bosses above them happy.
I think that is and should be their main.
Yeah, so I just want to be very clear that like lying doesn't matter anyways, dude. Like, that is a non-issue because everyone lies because facts are subjective already. But I do think that police will intentionally lie, not think. Like, it's happened many times. Provably happened many times where police will lie to either save the integrity of an investigation, to mislead suspects, and their intention for making decisions on lying is never if the public is going to be okay with it.
Yeah, there's no laws against police lying.
Yeah, obvious. Police lie all the time.
They just can't lie in court.
Well,
that's the only time they can't lie.
That's because, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a completely different situation. Listen, lying doesn't make them like untrustworthy. Their goal here, a police officer's number one and main goal, is to not keep the public happy. It is to keep the public safe. So if they need to lie to keep the public safe, then by all means, please lie, but be honest with your suspects. Be honest with the evidence gathering.
Oh.
Words mean nothing, right? But science means everything. So I'm not talking about making up evidence, but lying, like verbally lying, what does that matter?
Thank you, AR Hayes, by the way. I meant to mention that earlier. We appreciate you.
But
did you see this?
I just think that that could be a possible theory. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think that's my leading theory, but I do think it's a real possibility.
That would be nuts if there was no 911 call.
I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised.
That would make sense why they never released it, but there's a gag order in the case. They would have never released it anyway.
Yeah.
But that would be really interesting to find out.
Green is the man. He is the man. Okay. If there is a single main source of power in that town, it is Scott Green, you guys. 100%. He has more power than what's the city, not governor, mayor. He has more power than the mayor. He controls, not controls, but he has major say in like pay, where money goes into what departments and enforcements and what partnerships they do with what companies. This guy has a ton of power, you guys. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying anything like that. But his number one goal is going to be, how can this not tarnish the school?
I don't know where we left off with the IGG stuff. I think I was talking about how it's going to be an identity resolution technique, and that's terrifying because
the what?
It's going to be an identity resolution technique, or that's what it is. That's what it is. Not a cold case technique, identity resolution technique. And talking about how we're going to see a whole bunch in active cases. We're absolutely going to see a lot more. I think the Coburger case was like the main icebreaker with active cases. And
I think
after
it should
this,
be used as evidence.
Well, I understand why it's not used as evidence. Because I think there's more room for error there than we have been led to believe. So I think I understand why, because you cannot take an SNP and compare it and get an identical match to the suspect. Like, you can't take the SNP profile you got from the crime scene and then compare it with the buccal swab and get an SNP from that and compare them and get a direct
a statistical match, but that should be evidence. If that was used to point them in the direction of the suspect,
it should be in discovery.
Correct. Yes. That should be evidence, not an identification technique. It needs to be included, just in the same way that let's say I robbed a place, okay? And I robbed it, I heard sirens, so I stole a car outside, I drove down the road, got a flat tire, I left the car on the side of the road, stole another car, drove that to my house and ditched it by my house, okay? So if I got caught, the evidence drawing the cops to me from the place of the crime would be, okay, well, we got evidence that he was on the scene here. We followed this car on our videos and we found this car here, right? We believe he got a flat tire, and then we got reports of a stolen car across the street. We followed that and connected him to his house. All of that would be in discovery. It would have to be included, how they tracked me from the residence or from the business to my residence. So why are we not expecting that with IGG? It's the same thing. How are you drawing the conclusion or connection from this thing that we found at the crime scene to this suspect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm gonna send you a link because this girl really, she blew me away too. We can watch it if you want. We don't have to. But
Have you pre-watched it? Is there music in the background or anything?
I don't think there is. I mean, I have watched it, but gosh dang it.
Yep.
Just that at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, you can send it and we can watch it. But yeah, I think there's major issues with the IgG, with the SNP, with the DNA. And I feel like what we're seeing, right? Because like I was saying, going back to originally, anybody, whether you think Bryan Kohberger's innocent, whether you think he's guilty, I think anybody can look at this case and feel like there's problems here. There's something wrong. You can feel like he's guilty and feel like the police messed up the investigation. You can feel like he's innocent, feel like the police messed up the investigation. You could feel like the prosecutors are covering police mistakes. You can feel like the judge is helping the prosecutor and the prosecutor is helping cover police mistakes. Like there is something funky smelling here because this is not common for a lot of cases that we see. We're seeing a whole lot of firsts in this case and no information to back it based on what we're seeing in the pretrial and the constant never-ending requests for discovery and the state being unwilling to give it. Like, what is going on here except a total and gross amount of overreach and conviction without showing work product?
So
starting with IgG.
I really hope that Judge makes the right decision and makes the IgG all of what he got discoverable. Unfortunately, since they are not documenting their work and their investigation when they're doing the forensic genealogy very well, from what Bill Thompson said, it may not be the greatest, evidence, but I really hope he sets that precedence for the future and makes it all discoverable so that hopefully in future cases it will be made discoverable, because I do think it's important for it to be. I think it's important for the defense lawyers to be able to have their own experts take a look at it, especially learning how subjective reading DNA and doing forensic genealogy can be. It can be extremely subjective, which is what Tiffany Roy, this forensic expert, talks about. Is like there's lots of, I believe this is the one, I'm pretty sure. Let me look at my notes again real quick. But yeah, she talks about the decisions that are made during the interpretation and like how many decisions you have to make to get to that. I can look over and try to just find that part if we don't want to watch the whole thing. But
are you still?
What?
Are you done?
Yeah, you can talk.
Well, I didn't know if you were bringing up an additional point with that. So one of the suggestions, like here's an example, you guys. So if, as you know, right, funny, I've been in sales forever. Now, what comes with that is private information. Okay, so when I'm dealing with massive accounts, I'm not only dealing with private information for high-ranking executive officials in companies, but I'm also dealing with tax ID numbers. I'm also dealing with tax-exempt numbers. I'm also dealing with bank accounts that have millions of dollars in them, like very, very important information that can't get out to the general public. So one of the ways around that is in these systems that we use, we carry things like key fobs that have to be plugged into the computer before we can log into it. We have two-step authentication. We have auto login data and tracking, meaning when I hop into the system with all this private information in it, it will track everything I do in the coding on the back end. So everything is to make sure there's a level of accountability, and nobody can do anything shady within that system. So when I hear things from the pretrial that Bill Thompson is saying that, oh, they have some handwritten notes, I'm sorry, but that's just not acceptable. That is not acceptable. We have safety features and software out there where everything is tracked, every single thing, from the names and credit card information that's put in the computer system to logins to hitting the next on the page number to adding a phone number and email. Literally tracks every single click that's done. Why do we have a justice system that lives are depending on? We have a death penalty case here, a death penalty case. And we're being told that one of the key evidence pieces in the case has some handwritten notes. That is absurd. I feel like I'm in an upside down world.
You know why I think it's handwritten notes?
None of it's acceptable, but what?
The reason I think it's handwritten notes is Gabrielle Vargas, I'm pretty sure she's the one who mentioned this, that she has seen investigators make private personal accounts, like a user account, to search the system for a suspect, which they're not allowed to do because those people haven't consented to law enforcement searches. And in that case, it probably would just be handwritten notes.
I
that
don't
they
know
hope
what
to
the reason
destroy.
is. All I know is we should have systems where handwritten notes are unacceptable. What I expect to see is I would have expected Judge to respond back and say, handwritten notes, don't you log into a software system? Don't you log into a computer system? Doesn't this data go through a computer to generate the markers and make a comparison? Where is that information? If it's on a computer, then it's there. Anything other than that is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And that wasn't said. Therefore, the standards around what's acceptable is flawed, is wrong, is unacceptable. That's not okay.
Yeah, they're not really required to document it, though.
And this is somebody who might lose their life.
Yeah.
And that's my whole point. That's my whole point here, is that there is no rules. It is the wild, wild west. We are allowed to put somebody in front of 10 live rounds and be shot to death. And we're accepting handwritten scribbles.
Well, yeah, I mean,
what?
They didn't really actually have to turn over anything, I don't think. But
then it shouldn't be used.
You know what's really interesting? And after the stream, if you guys are still wanting more on IGG, I recommend Ghetto Clue's recent video on IGG. It was super good. Shout out to him. But he mentioned in that Bryan Coburger, if it's true, made a comment to one of his neighbors about being fascinated by his own genealogy. So maybe his DNA was in the system.
And
it depends
what
on
does that have to, I'm confused. Like, why
if he used one of the big ones like Ancestry, 23andMe, those do not consent to law enforcement searches. So did they get the tip by going through one of those searches? Because they do that we've heard that from multiple experts.
They allowed GEDmatch a back-end into their systems, and GEDmatch is notoriously used by law enforcement. That's where that loophole is it's like one system has a back-end system into all the others, and law enforcement logs into that system, not these systems, which is...
But they also make user accounts and do that, which is, I mean, it's not, I don't even know if it's considered illegal. It's just against the company's policies. So they do that, even though they're not supposed to. And if his was in there without him saying, I consent to law enforcement searches, they wouldn't want to write that. They wouldn't want to account for that. So did they do it through his dad to circumvent that?
I don't know. I'm not as concerned with that kind of government overreach. That is the big argument that we hear all the time, that, oh my gosh, they're using people's profiles that didn't check the box and say that it's okay for law enforcement to look into it, right? And but I'm more concerned with whether they have their science right or not, because they've created an experimental system where there is no accountability over it, no blind testing. The whole system's flawed.
Yeah,
I
but
don't care if they logged in with a personal account. Like, that's less important to me than it is for them to make connections from a dummy's point of view. They aren't experts. They don't know what they're doing. We were told that they were trained flawed and drawing conclusions because they don't know.
I mean, I think that the whole
They're two separate issues completely.
well, I think all of it is flawed, for one, because there's no oversight, there's no standardization, there's no laws. All of it is flawed. It is literally the wild, wild west. But I do have a major problem with them logging into databases that they're not allowed to be in, because that's a Fourth Amendment privacy. It's search and seizure.
Yeah, I get it.
That is a violation of rights. That is absolutely not okay.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that I don't think it's as big of a problem right now, because problems have to be prioritized, okay? And we've known about these issues with the government since what's his face came out and said they're listening to your cell phones and looking in your emails and everything. Like, we know our government's doing that. That's not a problem. But we need to protect the science. The science. If you can show your work product, then guilty is guilty, right?
I think all of these
But I
problems
don't
can be
think-
tackled.
I don't think that if they could be tackled, they would already be tackled, because this is nothing
No.
in comparison to what's his face's stuff, who came out about the, what is it, Department of Defense, and how
Edward Snowden.
they can use search words to pull up every single email from every single provider. Like, that's a way bigger overstep than, like, you know, these 5 people didn't check a box. Well, okay, they have back ends into our emails. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, in comparison, it's not as problematic. But
For you.
I think that, yeah, for me, obviously, it's so when I'm looking at science, we need to be able to have a system where we can depend and or trust on our science in our justice system. And the current science that they're running is flawed. I agree with you. I think the logins are a problem too. However, how do we know that there was even how do we know that DNA was even a connection at the crime scene when we have non-experts subjectively doing data comparisons?
And investigations into lineage and stuff. Yeah.
How do we know?
I don't know.
We don't.
And
We don't. That's like me putting on a white coat and going to a dentist's office and taking the first patient that comes in. Dude, I couldn't even name those tools that dentists use. None. I could try. I'll give it my best shot. If you got a cavity, I'm sure I could use that little drill thing and turn it on. You know, I know there's a vein in your jaw, and I might be able to numb you. I don't know. But I'd try. That's literally what we're seeing our police and investigators and prosecutors doing with the science of DNA, IgG, and STR comparisons.
And mentioning prosecutors, it was pretty wild to me to learn that prosecutors are doing this. But also, when determining if a case should have forensic genealogy used in it, a prosecutor is consulted. Like, they're supposed to consult them on whether or not they should use it and tell them everything going on in their investigation, and then keep them, like, updated. Like, the prosecutors are supposed to be a part of it. Bill Thompson should have known everything about this. He should have known everything.
Yeah.
Because they have to follow the laws of that state to make sure everything is above, board.
Yeah.
The prosecutor's
During the
supposed to be
investigation.
involved in the forensic genealogy.
Yeah, but that's from that. But that's from that rules, not rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that doesn't mean anything.
I mean,
Literally means nothing.
It's weird to me to even write it and not, and then be like, well, it's a policy and this is just a tip or a lead and you'll never use it in court. So nobody's ever going to check you on this.
And the people that are verifying the science are random people. That's what we're saying. The actual science experiment as is being done by the scientists, the investigative scientists. Okay, they're the ones doing the test tube, running the whatever that machine is called to pull the DNA out of the tube and then get it in the computer. But those results are being sent to the investigators and the prosecutors. The investigators and the prosecutors are determining whether it's an acceptable match or not.
So
that is insane.
I don't think that matters unless you're concerned about somebody having their hands in it and fudging it all. Like, I don't think that matters. For one, Othram does both. They collect the sample and they create family trees. So they're all in.
But what do you mean by that doesn't matter?
No state lab can do IgG. There isn't one. They're all private companies. So private companies are doing both. They are both taking samples and they are building family trees.
Okay. So going back to what doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters that they're not the same person who's collecting the sample and building the family tree at all, unless you are worried about somebody being in there and planting things.
No.
So
he was saying that he was saying that that they're not the ones that were comparing the samples, like making the decision that it's a match.
What he said that the people creating the family tree are not the people doing the science part of it. The science part of it is making that profile, running it through the machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the people reading these samples, they can be experts or they can just be law enforcement officers or prosecutors who have just taken a training course.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to no standardization. That's why this is so scary, you guys. That's why it's literally like the Wild West. And why now? I am now doubting the DNA evidence, because when we were looking into STR and the comparison factors, they're taking literal STR. Just take the SNP and IgG out of your mind for a minute. So we've been using STR samples for the last 3 decades, actually. I think it's 3 decades now. And those STR samples where they'll find DNA on site, they gather that, right? And they run it through CODIS and let's say no match. They couldn't find anybody. So they have 10 suspects. They get DNA from all 10 suspects. They believe it's number 7. Okay. So they run it through the test, and the rule of thumb is there needs to be 6 out of 10 matching points on the test. I'm just throwing that number out there. That's not real. So when the test comes in, they have 5 matching, and then they have 2 blobs. And a blob just means there was a flaw in the test. It could have been a hair on the testing machine. It could have been literally anything. It's just like a fudge on the screen, right? Well, you have the investigators and the prosecutors who have the power to read that result and take the original sample and then take this other one that is 5 markers matching, not 6, 5, and then a fudge, a blob over 2. And they're saying, well, behind that blob could be a match. So we're going to go with this as a match in a court of law.
Right. So yes, the science part, they're collecting it, they're running it through these machines, and then their result, which is what you're talking about, which shows the signal and all the alleles where you can see those little humps that were in our DNA video. they're taking those and then they're reading them and saying if it's a match or not. And sometimes it can have blobs. And the issue is with a low copy number, like 20 cells, which is alleged in this case with Bryan Kohberger, if it's only 20 cells, they can only run that through the machine one single time. One time. Meaning if there are these blobs, if there are like pieces missing, they can't run it again to see what, like, you know, to do it several times to get the best result. They can't do that. They can only do it once. So that's all they got. And then you have people who are not experts the way that we would see an expert, like somebody who has went to college, has, you know, done biology, has studied, you know, DNA and all of that. They haven't done that. They are law enforcement officers. They are prosecutors sometimes. And they're taking that and they're doing their own genealogy investigation, uploading it to this database, getting all of these matches, which we know it's all centimorgans. It's a certain percentage. And from what I heard Steve Bush talking about is you can have like 3,000 of those matches. And he said that's a lot. And that's why he's creating this software called Indago, because he talked about roadblocks and other situations you go through, pain points in the process that make it take months sometimes, that can make it take a super long time. Like, okay, think of expert Gabrielle Vargas. She's like an expert in creating family trees and doing genealogy. The problem is that she is not, and people like her are not the only people doing this. From what Get a Clue has said, from what I've seen in his videos, it appears the FBI came in and swooped up the SNP from Othram and did the family tree themselves. Most likely meaning that agents made this family tree and made this connection. I heard Lana say one time that Vargas told her, like, everyone was kind of looking at each other, that she knew because this pool of experts that are as qualified as Vargas to do genealogy, it's relatively small. And they all pretty much know each other. And from what I've seen from these forensic conventions and the genealogy people that go to them, it is small. It's a small amount of people. And nobody said, yeah, I did that tree. I worked on that case. You know, this is word of mouth and stuff like that. But it makes me curious. Who made this match? Who did this genealogy? Was it just an agent? Was it not an expert like Vargas? And how subjective were they in their genealogy investigation? Because from what I heard Tiffany Roy say, who's a forensic expert that I wanted to play, is that every step along of the way, you're making decisions and they can be very subjective when you're doing genealogy.
And they can change the outcome.
Yeah, we don't believe Bryan Coburger. We don't believe in his innocence or guilt. We don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
We just believe
the
in
case is the focus.
Yeah, it's the whole case as a whole.
Yeah, there could be a ton of matches. And what's interesting is they sent out that number that isn't even real. That 5 octillion number that isn't even real.
Right. It's a major, right. It's not real. It's total BS.
There's never been that many humans in all of history.
And if that sample is partial, I feel like we have a major problem here.
Dude, and you have one of the leading experts in the entire world, like the GOAT, leading experts in the entire world saying it's partial. So who are we supposed to believe? Because in my opinion, I'm going with the science, dude. I'm always going to go with the science.
She said it being partial and ambiguous warranted more investigation. So should he even be in jail right now? Should he have even been arrested yet?
Did you explain this?
The blob? No.
The interpretation on the screen here. Okay, so this is what you would see, you guys. So if that report we keep talking about, right, where we say the scientists and experts would run the test, they would go into their lab, they would have that profile, or they would have a blood sample, you know, whatever produces. We haven't even touched on touch DNA yet, but so they have that source of DNA. They get it in the test tube, they run it through the test, and this is what they come up with right here. Okay, this is their suspect DNA, suspect 1. Then they have a whole bunch of people that they believe could be the suspect and make a match to this. So what they would do is they'd get different samples and then come up with matches, right? And then when they're looking at their comparing, they'll see 2 reports like this, and they have to have a certain amount of factors to be a match. And this is the typical evidence sample, and then this is a comparison. And see how these 2 are different here? They're looking for these same markers. They, in a perfect sample, which there isn't one, they don't get perfect samples, but in a perfect sample, they should be able to overlay these and they'll be identical. That's why DNA is never concrete. It is never a match or not. That doesn't exist. This is the DNA testing that you see. It is percentage of matches. Percentage.
Yeah, it is.
And it's extremely subjective in the way that it could be read because of things like this here on the screen. That's the blob.
That's the blob. Yep. And it's basically like dust could have been in the machine. You see how it doesn't look like any of the other spikes and how it's wide, and that's what he said they call it. It's a blob.
Yeah.
And it's just an issue within the machine. And if you don't have enough skin cells to repeat the test,
then you're left with a partial test.
You're left with a partial test and
single source.
While many experts would say this test is inconclusive, law enforcement and prosecutors would argue, well, you don't know what's behind that blob, so we think it's a match.
Yeah, we're going to take it into account and say that, you know, this is part of the match percentage. That's scary. Like, really scary.
Yeah, it drives me crazy about the 3 unknown male DNA, because if they only had 20 skin cells for Bryan Kohberger and got a full-on match, 5 octillion whatever, how could they not run any tests on those 3 unknown male DNAs?
Well, is a 5 octillion number even possible with a partial?
I don't believe so. I don't even know that 5 octillion is even possible, period. But CH says that they seem to know how they got that 5 octillion number.
What?
I have found out how they get those numbers. Say you have a person with ABC alleles. The likelihood is the product of each probability.
Yeah.
A times B times C. So if A is 1 in 5, a 5 million chance, then okay. Gotcha.
That makes sense. So then they're just multiplying the factors of those percentages, but that doesn't sound real. To me, it sounds like that's a flawed statistic, because if you're doing it that way, then you're not taking into account the likelihood of there being actual humans alive. Sounds flawed to me, because then in that same equation, would they divide the ones that don't match? Because it's never 100%. Ever.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, CH. That's really interesting, and it is ridiculous. That doesn't seem like real science-y, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It sounds like investigators making up things.
It does sound like investigators making up things. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, okay, taking all of that into account, right? Let me see here. Oh, I needed to do my shout outs too real quick. Okay. So, real quick here, but before we continue, I wanted to give a shout out to let me see. Murder Metal Mayhem. So they gave us a shout out and said some really nice things about us before Christmas time, and I kept meaning to give them a shout out, and I kept forgetting. Super rude of me, and but I just wanted to be able to give them a shout out and let them know that we saw it and we appreciate the nice words. And if you're a metal type person, you know, the theme of the show is super interesting. I enjoy it. It is true crime, metal, and he's sitting there talking and going through it. And there's some really good points made in the video that I saw where he was referencing us and giving us a shout out. So check them out, you guys, and keep fighting the good fight, Murder Metal Mayhem.
Yes.
And then the Reddit. We're always going to give this Reddit a shout out because they deserve it, because they are awesome. If you guys are on Reddit, make sure you check out this subreddit. It is the only Idaho 4 or Bryan Coburger related subreddit that is willing to have real and open conversations. Now, there have been quite a few trolls that have joined in here and people trying to hate, but hey, that's just going to happen no matter where you go. If you're not on Reddit already, I don't suggest you join Reddit because it is madness and it is echo chamber central. Like, if you want to understand how an echo chamber works, you just hop on Reddit, right? And that is like, Reddit's built for echo chambers.
It is.
So,
because you have moderators who condemn you, literally like remove you for disagreeing.
yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. So, okay, taking that into account. Now, let me see here.
Why do I hear everybody doing that thing today?
I don't know.
It's driving me crazy. Why do you just need to make noise with your mouth?
Because I do.
I've heard like 4 people do it today.
Do you have the D.O.J. interim policy?
Yeah.
That's one thing we could look
Yeah.
at. And then, yeah, don't even get me, while you're looking for that, don't even get me started on Touch DNA. Touch DNA is allowed to be used in less court systems worldwide than it is to be used. Yeah, I do need chapstick. You're right. So Touch DNA, when looked at from a military court system perspective, they believe that it is a pseudoscience, that it is so unreliable that it is a pseudoscience. Okay, so we just talked about all those issues with the IgG, SNP being the wild, wild west. And now we're finding out that even STR and DNA, which is the end all be all concrete evidence, the best of the best that we've been told, is flawed in itself also. Now, on top of that, we also, in this case, in the Idaho 4 case, are dealing with touch DNA on top of it. I feel like it's a scene of like, let's stack everything against ourselves that we possibly can.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It is the most doubt in a science that I've ever I can come up with. Like, this is the worst equation possible.
I just didn't expect to see how much freedom of choice that investigators could have with something that is a science.
Yeah, when you hear science, you expect it to be
there's
reliable.
supposed to be control. Like, there's supposed to be, You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, I
It's
do
not
know.
supposed to be random or, up to interpretation. It's not supposed to be like that.
No, it's not. Science should be able to be depended on.
Your goal should be complete, true, just objectiveness, like just being totally objective.
As objective as possible
As
while
humanly possible.
minimizing the subjectivity, because it's impossible to have total lack of subjectivity. There's no way to do that.
We will do that, Pebbles. I'll write it down.
All right. So are there any major key aspects in this that you really think should be highlighted? Because I don't really want to read all of it, although we can.
I probably should have sent you my highlighted copy.
It's okay. We can just
No, we
touch on
shouldn't
it.
read it all. I'll just scroll through it and read the parts
Purpose
that
and scope, yeah.
The purpose of this interim policy is to promote the reasoned exercise of investigative, scientific, and prosecutorial discretion in cases that involve forensic, genetic, genealogy, DNA analysis, and searching, FGGS. It provides guidance to department agencies when formulating a thoughtful and collaborative approach to important interdisciplinary decisions in cases that utilize this investigative technique. Collaboration between investigators, laboratory personnel, and prosecutors is important because the decision to pursue FGGS may affect privacy interests, the consumption of forensic samples, and law enforcement's ability to solve violent crime.
Yeah, and that sounds all great.
The department must use FGGS in a manner consistent with the requirements and protections of the Constitution and other legal authorities. Moreover, the department must handle information and data derived from FGGS in accordance with applicable laws, regulations, policies, and procedures. Okay.
Yes. And that sounds all nice until you find out that this
Here.
is just
The scope of this interim policy is
suggestion.
limited. Yeah, it's a suggestion. Is limited to the requirements set forth herein. It does not control investigative, scientific, or prosecutorial activities or decisions not specifically addressed. The department's individual law enforcement components may issue additional guidance that is consistent with the provisions of this interim policy.
interesting.
So, here's a footnote. This interim policy provides department components with internal guidance. It is not intended to, does not, and may not be relied upon to create any substantive or procedural rights or benefits enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States or its departments. It does not impose any legal limitations on otherwise lawful investigative or prosecutorial activities or techniques utilized by the Department of Justice, or limit the prerogative choices or decisions available to or made by the department in its discretion. So right here, it says it does not impose any legal limitations.
Yep.
On anything that's lawful.
It's insane, dude. It is really crazy. Hang on. So I want to read the application part. This interim policy applies to all criminal investigations in which an investigative agency in the Department of Justice has exclusive or concurrent jurisdiction of the crime under investigation, and the agency has lawful custody, control, or authority to use a forensic sample for FGGS, or any criminal investigation in which the department provides funding to a federal, state, local, or tribal agency to conduct FGGS, or any criminal investigation in which department employees or contractors conduct genealogical research on leads generated through the use of FGGS, or any federal agency or any unit, state, local, or tribal government that receives grant award funding from the department that is used to conduct FGGS. So why I wanted to read that is because that sounds all great and everything for laying out the law. Like they're saying that essentially every agency needs to use it, and it needs to be used in a way that is in accordance with local law enforcement and law in accordance with your justice system locally. Now, then it states in small print, right where you were saying that it holds no power, and that anything outside of this scope can be allowed and used.
Mhm.
So then what's the point?
Well, I mean, that's kind of with any law, right? If you have a law, even like an actual law.
I mean, an actual
If it's
law
not
is
written,
the law.
if it's
but-
not, yeah, but if it's not written into it, then it's not. There's
Right,
nothing
but
on it.
The fact of the matter is this doesn't have power. A law does.
Yeah.
If this was a law and the expectations around IGG, aka FGG or FGGS, then this would hold power and would matter. But it's simultaneously saying, we believe this is how it should be handled. However, we're not saying you have to handle it this way. It's a messed up process.
There needs to be laws, like real laws.
Otherwise, it shouldn't be allowed. And this is why it's so mind-blowing. Like this is, like I said in the beginning of the stream, you guys, there are 3 topics that really get me going when it comes to true crime. And this is one of them. Drives me insane.
Mm-hmm. So I was just talking about STR. Yeah, it's wild to me. What are you doing?
Oh, sorry. I wanted to see that SNP during forensic DNA casework, but
I wanted to read the part where here. So, FGG examines more than 500,000 single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs, which replace the STR DNA markers analyzed in traditional forensic DNA typing. These SNPs or SNPs span the entirety of the human genome. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I didn't realize it spanned the whole genome. This
Yeah.
allows scientists to identify shared blocks of DNA between a forensic sample and the sample donor's potential relatives. Recombination or reshuffling of the genome is expected as DNA from each generation is passed down, resulting in larger shared blocks of identical DNA between closer relatives and shorter blocks between more distant relatives.
Interesting.
So yeah, they can analyze them and make inferences regarding potential familial relationships. So department laboratories currently do not analyze SNPs during forensic DNA casework. Thus, it is in appropriate cases, it is necessary to outsource biological material to vendor laboratories that perform FGG. After a forensic or reference sample is genotyped by a vendor laboratory, like Othram, the resulting FGG profile is entered into one or more publicly available open data personal genomics DNA databases or direct to consumer genetic genealogy services.
And
Yeah.
that's what I was curious about. And I think that's okay, because if you committed a crime and you left your DNA at the crime scene, dude, you're bad, bro. Don't commit crimes.
Well,
you know?
yes, but that's another important part to that, is that experts, and I heard Tiffany Roy say this, like, we as experts need to be coming out and saying, hey, look, that I understand that DNA is at the crime scene, but DNA spreads, touch DNA spreads. So you have to explain how that got there.
Yeah. I mean, technically that's how all DNA is looked at. And we're taught through movies and all kinds of other things that that's not the case. But all DNA has to be explained how it got there. Every bit of it. Because all DNA can be moved. All of it.
It's true. That's why it's circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, like if you were asleep, I could get a turkey baster and and just suck your drool out of your mouth and place it at a crime.
Oh, you're gonna say something else. Okay. The FGG profile is then compared by automation against the genetic profiles of individuals who have voluntarily submitted their biological samples or entered their genetic profiles into these GG services. A computer algorithm is used to evaluate potential familial relationships between the forensic or reference sample donor and service user. So one thing that Steve Bush was saying that ex-FBI agent is that FGG is great because it's informed voluntary consent, without mentioning that it's not informed voluntary consent when police officers are logging into databases with personal consumer accounts to do their investigations. And he said, you know, the public will support us as long as we're honest and transparent and all of that. Transparent is the important part, I believe. So, I since he's heavily involved in this, does he know that they're not doing that? That they're using people who did not consent?
Yeah.
A tissue would work, but let's use a turkey baster. Right. It is important to note that personal genetic information is not transferred, retrieved, downloaded, or retained by GG service users, including law enforcement, meaning that any service users who are accessing that database do not get to download it or retain it. It stays in the database, and investigators the same.
Yeah,
and they don't get to see your genetic code either. Steve Bush said that was really important to mention, is that when they are comparing your sample to others like in the database, they're not seeing all those people's genetic code. They're just seeing the centimorgan, you know, the match.
Yeah.
The percentage.
Yeah. And Ralph, I have also theorized this for a very long time. I have no way to get confirmation of that, but it doesn't seem possible that he wasn't in CODIS because of his job applications, because of the programs that he was a part of. That's felt like a flaw to me from the beginning. I just don't have evidence for that. But if your fingerprints are in the system, normally there's they take the DNA sample too at the same time when you're applying for those jobs. And in order to be considered for an application, that you do have to offer up DNA when it's law enforcement. So I've wondered that. And I've wondered how much of that information that we've had come out are surrounding the DNA and SNP, IgG, any of that stuff is spot on, or if it's all full of it. You know what I mean? I think anything's possible. I really, really, really do, until I see the science myself. And that goes back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, where we don't even know if there was a 911 call made, except everyone has talked endlessly about this 911 call. How do we know one was made? We don't know anything. If we're looking for science, if we're looking for repeatable information, what would be considered factual, right? Because facts are flawed because they're subjective opinions of a certain person's, lived experience. The type of evidence we want is evidence that can be provable and repeatable. And, we just don't have that. We don't have it. And it's a shame.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust the DNA in this case because of some of the things that I'm seeing and how uncommon they were done. Because we had the IgG profile before we saw DNA reconfirming that in person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because they didn't need to pull DNA like they said they did if he's already in the system and if family was in the system and the IgG profile was already being built before they even got any of that trash.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tennessee, I'm curious where you're getting the 20 markers from. Was that mentioned in any documents? Because I don't remember that. Okay. So this is where like the 3,000 matches comes in.
Okay.
Sometimes, like, I know I heard Vargas say like she has solved a case in like literally a minute, 60 seconds, a minute, where someone who was super close, like brother, sister, or like parent, was in the system, and it was that fast.
Yeah.
And then I heard
Makes sense.
it took months, like over a year. And then I heard Steve Bush say that sometimes the highest centimorgan match is not the best match, because when you're looking in these databases, if they don't have their legal name there and they don't have any identifying information, and it's just like an email address like hotkitty@gmail.com or something, or hot dog, anything like that, like it's just an email address, you have no idea who this person is and you have no way of tracking them down, then the high centimorgan match doesn't matter. It doesn't help you unless you can figure out how to track that person down, or they'll respond to an email.
That's interesting.
And in some situations, they literally have to go out there and knock on people's doors and contact them and request a DNA sample.
This is directly tied to it. So go to see and grab the situation. The document I was reading around this DNA, they suggest you literally get out in the field and verify the information that you're building in your tree. Engage with everybody every day, and then discipline and accountability. You know, wouldn't that be great? Discipline and accountability every time.
Okay. Interesting. So here,
go ahead.
Hold on. So, I don't think I need to read this whole thing. A genetic association. Oh gosh, I always do that with this thing. A genetic association means that the donor of the sample may be related to a service user. However, information derived from genetic associations is used by law enforcement only as an investigative lead. Traditional genealogy research and other investigative work is needed to determine the true nature of any genetic association. A suspect shall not be arrested based solely on a genetic association generated by GG service. If a suspect is identified after a genetic association has occurred, STR DNA typing must be performed, and the suspect's STR DNA profile must be directly compared to the forensic profile previously uploaded to CODIS. This comparison is necessary to confirm that the forensic sample could have originated from the suspect. And I find it interesting they put could have. Not that it did, but could have originated from the suspect, meaning there's probably a little room for error there.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
What?
Okay, here we go. Case criteria. This is important. Investigative agencies may initiate the process of considering the use of FGGS when a case involves an unsolved violent crime and the candidate forensic sample is from a putative perpetrator, or when a case involves what is reasonably believed by investigators to be the unidentified remains of a suspected homicide victim, unidentified human remains. In addition, the prosecutor, as defined in footnote 20 of this interim policy, may authorize the investigative use of FGGS for violent crimes or attempts to commit violent crimes other than homicide, or sexual offenses while observing and complying with all requirements of this interim policy. When the circumstances surrounding the criminal acts present a substantial and ongoing threat to public safety or national security. And Steve Bush specifically pointed that little part out, that one sentence,
national security.
That gives them wiggle room of being able to use this more in more cases.
Yeah.
Like they have way more wiggle room. I mean, if you even consider this as anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a tip. They do not include all tips in discovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially not this for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean that's important, that part though, or ongoing threat to public safety or national security. What's interesting is how manipulative, how that can be manipulated to literally fit anybody. You
just
guys,
like
anybody.
What's the act?
The act
that they passed that could make basically anyone declared a terrorist and be treated that way, and it takes away all your rights.
I forget what it's called. It was, but we covered it. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't even think it was 20 skin cells, you guys. I think it was less than 20 is what they were reporting, which is wild stuff.
Yeah.
20 skin cells. So
it came from Blum. It came from the Blum article about the 20 skin cells.
When you touch somebody, you leave thousands. 20. I just blew more than 20 into the air. 20 can literally float through the air and land on something. That's how few 20 skin cells are.
And you know what Get a Clue pointed out? Is that at the time when Blum wrote that article where he talked about Othram and the 20 skin cells, he was pumping the cops up in his articles. Like, they're doing a fantastic job. And he thinks he had some kind of connection with somebody that was close to the investigation. And that's where he got that information. And they were okay with it because he was pumping them up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good technique.
Interesting.
Yep, it's a good technique, but that's scary information.
I mean, it came out in, it didn't just come out in the Blum articles, though. It did come out in other media articles, too.
Yeah, well, I also saw a couple experts talking to a reporter about it and saying, like, how few skin cells that is. And remember, like we said a little bit ago, skin cells, that is what is not allowed in most of the courtrooms in the world. Our own Department of Justice, our not Department of Defense, our own military court personnel say that it's a pseudoscience, that skin cells are. And then we see all these problems that we've been talking about all night with the wild, wild west, no laws, no rules, skin cells. And are we sure that there's a match?
Well, also, they could be calling that blob a match, but they could also, so in that sample we showed, you know, the spikes were really high. And then you'll see one that's really low. That means there wasn't much DNA there, which means it's supposed to be inconclusive, not a match.
Yeah.
But because that little bump is there, they'll be like, well, I think that is a match. I think that's signal. I don't think that's just noise in the machine.
Right.
So we have the issue of tiny little humps that mean a tiny amount of DNA, or blobs, anomalies, where they could say, oh, I think that's signal, I think that's a match, and it's not. So if they had 20 markers, I want to know, were those markers the perfect humps that we see in those samples where it shows there was a high amount of DNA for that specific allele?
Wait, who said there's 20 markers?
It was Tennessee, but I haven't seen that anywhere. I have seen nowhere that there was 20 markers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard that. All I know is we have Bicka Barlow, who is like probably one of the few experts I trust that we've seen talk say that it was a partial match and ambiguous. So knowing that skin cells are a pseudoscience and our own military doesn't allow them in there, I just don't have a lot of faith in this DNA evidence, you guys. I wish I could, but I don't. I just don't. I don't trust it.
I think it can be anywhere from 15 to 22. I don't really know though how many markers that you need. The DNA profile is based on 24 genetic markers. So I think that's SDR, that it's 24. But they can analyze it with less. CODIS uses 20. Okay.
Yeah, it says their autosomal nature CODIS markers can be used to assess whether two people are likely to be closely related. 26 alleles that comprise person's CODIS markers. 13 would have been inherited from each parent. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, wait. I think Get a Clue literally pulled this up and said something about the parent. So
Okay.
13 from each parent.
Yeah.
Maybe they just compared that to his father's.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. I can't remember.
13 from each parent. So then they would just need 13.
Yeah, I would want all 24 markers or 26 markers to show to convict me too. But
yeah, it says the so-called CODIS markers are a collection of 13 autosomal STR markers. The CODIS name refers to the Combined DNA Index System, which is a database in the United States consisting of profiles derived from the so-called CODIS markers. Because their autosomal nature, CODIS markers can be used to assess whether two people are likely to be very closely related to each other. In particular, of the 26 alleles that comprise a person's CODIS markers, 13 would have been inherited from each parent. Two siblings will, on average, share half of their 26 CODIS alleles in common with each other. CODIS DNA tools can be used to take a person's CODIS markers and determine some sense of the person's ethnic background. To do this, they generally perform a comparison with CODIS markers from various samples.
yeah, Ralph said everyone thinks you need 20 for CODIS, but you don't. You only need 8.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't doubt it.
So it could be a partial profile, and they could only have 8 and run it.
Like I said in the beginning, you can put anything in there, but it's what is accepted. People have this automatic idea that like, oh wait, you like it's not going to let you hit search unless you have this many in there. That's not how computers work, especially software systems that have a data set that they're searching from. They could probably put 2 in there. But the thing is, when you put 2 in there, those 2 are going to match hundreds of thousands of people. It's going to be completely and totally ineffective. So they might have been able to put something in CODIS and they're getting a ton of matches. We don't know because DNA isn't concrete. DNA. Okay, so what else we got on here? Investigative collaboration.
Well,
what do we got?
We're talking about the criteria. So before an investigative agency may attempt to use FGGS, the forensic profile derived from the candidate forensic sample must have been uploaded to CODIS, and subsequent CODIS searches must have failed to produce a probative and confirmative or confirmed DNA match. Is this where it talks about the prosecutor? No. Oh, they need to. The DLO must determine if the candidate forensic sample is from a single source contributor or is a deduced mixture. So is it from one person or is it from many or two or whatever?
Or is it a soup?
DNA soup sounds great.
Yeah. No, this stuff is interesting. It's interesting because it makes me want to pay attention to how many investigations don't follow this because this isn't a law.
I love lentil soup. How did you know?
Lentil soup?
Amazing. Lentils are the best.
But yeah, there are so many factors to this investigation that make me doubt it. I just have zero faith in this DNA evidence from all the different factors right now. The fact that it is touch DNA and our own military says touch DNA is a pseudoscience, to the fact that they subcontracted out building a profile, to the fact that they said there wasn't a CODIS match, even though I feel like there's no way Bryan Kohberger's profile wasn't in CODIS. I just don't feel like there's any way it wasn't. It has to be. With all the submissions to work at law enforcement and being a part of the doctorate program.
Are you sure
and
law enforcement are entered to CODIS because it's for violent offenders?
Yes. Their DNA profiles are put in the system.
Yeah, but
yes,
the CODIS system or a different system?
I mean, it all connects through CODIS. What DNA systems are
FBI or law enforcement? I don't know. No, not law enforcement, because that'll make.
Yeah.
No, that's
CODIS administered by the FBI maintains DNA profiles obtained through federal, state, and local DNA samples collection programs. Yes. It is not only specifically violent offenders.
That is not what that is saying.
What are you talking about? Yes, it is. The combined DNA index system administered by the FBI maintains DNA profiles obtained through federal, state, and local DNA sample collection programs. I knew that. I just wanted to make sure. All the DNA profiles are entered in there. You don't have to be a violent offender. Yep.
I don't know. I have to look it up later. I don't think that's what that's saying.
Yeah, it is. And this is saying that police are put into the CODIS system. So and all agencies around the world have access to it, including Interpol.
Where does it say
Australia?
Where does it
Canada,
say where?
France, Germany.
Okay, where does it say that agents and law enforcement officers have to give their DNA and it goes into CODIS? Where does it say that?
Police forces to take DNA.
If they were to take a DNA from officers, I feel like it would have to go in a private database.
Dude, no way.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Why? You want law enforcement that has the possibility of being a criminal?
Are you sure they don't run it through CODIS, but they just don't retain it in CODIS just to check
Why?
to see if your DNA is in the system, but they don't keep it in there?
Why would you not keep it in there? You are
'Cause they're
always
not
a risk to
felons.
society.
They're not
You don't have
felons.
to be a felon to be in CODIS.
I think you do.
No,
I think you have to be a
Not based
violent
off-
offender.
no, not based off what this says. Not based off what this says.
I mean, I haven't seen you point out where it actually says that law enforcement officers' DNA go into CODIS.
I just started looking up what goes into CODIS. We're talking about two different subjects. We can pull it up later and look into it.
Okay.
Produce a DNA profile.
Okay, let's just finish the interim policy.
Yeah. Do it.
Okay. So let's see. I can't remember. Okay. Trying to figure out where it talks about the prosecutor again. So this is interesting right here. Subject to applicable law in all cases that result in a criminal prosecution, reference samples obtained from third parties for FGGS, including all extracts and amplicon, all derivative FGG profiles, and all GG service account information and data shall be destroyed by the investigative agency only after the entry of an appropriate judicial order. The investigative agency shall document the authorized destruction of these samples, profiles, information, and data. So that means that the FBI should have had all of this, and it shouldn't have been destroyed, any of their investigation, any of their documentation, anything. It should have all been kept until there was a judicial order asking to destroy it.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing to remember, though, is these aren't rules. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Why did you do that?
What do you mean? Is these aren't laws. They don't have to follow them.
Yeah, I know. Subject to applicable government information retention schedules, if FGGS does not result in an arrest and the filing of criminal charges, the investigative agency shall promptly destroy all third-party reference samples. And they have to document the destruction too.
Yeah, this is just saying that CODIS has more than 10% of the population in it. So is more than 10% violent criminals?
I mean, it spans like multiple decades. So
it just says more than 10% of the population. So that's a percentage.
okay.
So not a total number. So I don't think it has to be violent criminals, but we'll keep looking it up for sure. I think violent criminals are required. I think that's what you're confusing.
Well, it's retained.
Yeah,
So
anybody who's been entered in CODIS, you're there, dude. That's it. If you've been tied to a crime scene and you've been entered in CODIS, you're there. Like, things that are put online never come off of the internet. So if you've been put in a computer, you are forever in a computer. You just have to know how to search it.
Okay.
But yeah, I hope law enforcement is ran through there. Otherwise, we got problems. I know that they hook you up to a lie detector test. I know that for 100% sure. I know that they take your DNA for 100% sure. I would assume that you're put in there. It's not used as like if It's not used as a conviction punishment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, am I tripping? Why did this not work?
What? That showed something.
Yeah, at the top. It's not at the top.
Oh.
I did Command F, and it's not showing prosecutor anywhere else in this. Oh, here it is. I found it. Page 5. I got to remember that. Did I read this yet? After consulting with the DLO, the investigative agency shall contact the prosecutor. The investigative agency shall advise the prosecutor of the nature and status of the investigation, the results of the DLO's evaluation of the candidate forensic sample, and any reasonable scientific alternatives to FGGS provided by the DLO. After discussing these issues and based on the information provided, the prosecutor and the investigative agency must agree the candidate forensic sample is suitable for FGG and that FGGS is a necessary and appropriate step at that stage of the investigation to develop investigative leads or to identify the unidentified human remains. If agreement is reached on these points, FGGS may proceed.
Again, this is one of those topics where like it sounds really great. It sounds like it should be a regulation. However, there is no standardization around this DNA. It's literally the wild, wild west. So this is a great starting point. But why are we allowed to use these things in a court of law right now without having this kind of required standardization? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
None.
I agree.
Zero.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Do you?
No, and I think that's why Bicka Barlow is doing her presentation this January 19th at the Forensic Institute.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear what she has to say on it. Every concern I have about forensic genetic genealogy, she's addressing.
Yeah, I just wish that there was actionable information coming out, because we can talk about it, right? And talking about it is step one. I'm not saying talking about it isn't important.
She's a lawyer.
But we need actual change. We need to not have this be allowed in our court system until these issues and problems have been rectified.
Yeah.
Really, it's a problem. And so many people have so much doubt in our justice system and law enforcement. And these are part of the reasons why. No oversight. None. Zero. It's insane.
It's just like the fog data science. There's no oversight with that either. They can track anybody who has their data being their location data being kept by data brokers, which is all of us. They can track any of us and identify any of us with no warrant and no oversight at all.
Yeah.
And say you were walking by a house, like, you know, you went to go get a coffee and next door in an apartment, somebody got murdered and they connected you there because you were the one random phone that was out of the ordinary in that area. You could be connected to a crime.
Yeah. Yeah. With flawed science comes flawed results.
Say you have a bad cop that wants to stalk you, harass you, terrorize you. They can track you in real time using fog data science.
Yep. Yep. It's definitely problematic. We need to take the subjectivity out of these topics included in the Idaho 4 case, 100% in the Idaho 4 case. You know, part of the reason nobody trusts it is these cops had way too much freedom, in my opinion. I think way too much freedom. I don't think that any part of this investigation should have been conducted if there wasn't a body cam turned on. I don't know why they included Thompson when he has an active investigation into him. When he's been proven, literally proven to be corrupt. And like we've talked about, the same kind of evidence was used.
Yeah, I know.
in
That's
this case and the Dr. Moore case.
the Dr. Moore case.
It's
It is,
crazy.
and it's really weird that they have Dr. Moore supposedly circling on cameras, security cameras, CCTV footage, circling the area, getting caught on all these cameras. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the Coburger case. And Tolson fudged those.
Yeah, but that's fake. He wasn't actually circling the area. His office is right there. That's his doctor's office is right there.
Dr. Moore, I know.
Yeah.
He was framed. Tolson made it look that way.
I
And
know.
the other officers involved.
Right. But Dr. Moore wasn't actually circling. He was just doing his normal everyday business and driving to his doctor's office and driving away, or stopping in there, and because he had his office in the same city that he worked in. And Tolson came and took these video and altered the timestamps, changed the timestamps to make it look like that was his car in the area, even though there were eyewitnesses saying no, or they didn't say no to Dr. Moore's truck, but the eyewitness account they gave was a completely different colored truck. They gave an eyewitness account of the man running away from the scene, which was a different skin color, different hair color and style, different height, different everything. And he was physically running, and they hid all that evidence to frame Dr. Moore. And that officer was a leading decision maker in the Idaho 4 case. And we're supposed to trust the law enforcement?
Was there
What?
any DNA at all used in the Moore case? I don't think so, right? Because he confessed. Right?
No,
And he didn't actually ever go in the building
So
either.
once he confessed, there is no evidence that has to get submitted to the court. So they had the evidence, and it was going to be used, but once he confessed, they talked with the prosecutor and didn't submit it in front of a jury.
Well, yeah, it doesn't go to trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the evidence was still there.
Okay,
It's
I asked
still
if
evidence.
I know. I asked if there was DNA used at all.
No DNA.
No,
No,
I didn't
because
think
there was
so.
a shooting from afar. The shooter was outside, the victim was inside, so there wouldn't be DNA evidence in that case unless there was some kind of skin cells on the bullet head, and I don't think there was, but
I mean, Tolson's provenly corrupt.
they literally tried to
through
kill him.
the Dr.
Dr.
Moore
Moore.
documents. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, there's no
They-
question about it.
They
He was
fudged
exonerated.
evidence. Yeah, and Dr. Moore was. They fudged evidence the entire time. They threatened an official, a voted-in official.
Who was a witness. That's the important part, is that he was a witness.
Yeah.
He was his witness for his alibi.
Yeah, and they threatened him. There was a gas leak, which you can call coincidence, but there's no way I'm saying that was unintentional, that all of a sudden when all this is going on and he's being set up and framed, there's a gas leak in his office that makes him pass out, and he just so happens to be found passed out. Whoever it was didn't understand gas and how long it takes to fill up a room or anything like that, because lucky for Dr. Moore. If you're trying to kill someone with gas, like, you got to know your math and you got to know your science. You need to know if the gas that you're using is heavier than the air and lighter than the air. If it's lighter than the air, then it's not all going to go to the top. So once you pass out and hit the ground, you're going to not be in the gas anymore. So, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Obviously, whoever set that gas leak up didn't have any planning. They were dummies. Sounds like Tolson. I mean, it's not smart. If you're going to be a criminal, be smart, dude. What are you doing? I know that's joking, laughing around, but like, you're a police officer and you're fraudulently creating fake evidence, total corruption, the worst of the worst kind of police officers. You're the officer that brings a bad name to every good officer out there. You're the officer that causes us to want to talk bad towards bad officers, corrupt officers like yourself, and paint a really bad image on these good officers out there. You're the disgusting one, and you're not even doing it in a smart fashion. What a dummy, dude.
Lentils and cilantro are the best. We would just be sending him a great meal.
Who?
Tolson.
Yeah, I'm not sharing my cilantro with him.
No.
No way.
He can have parsley.
I mean, he can have my cilantro after I've eaten it. But yeah, I think that people that think that Bryan Kohberger is guilty, dude, I hope at least those people can look at this case and understand why so many people doubt it.
Yeah.
Because it's a big, giant pile of doo-doo. Let's be real here. The science is a joke.
There's many people who don't feel that way.
I don't understand how. Then they're not looking at the science. They're looking strictly subjective. Police officers talk, and I believe police officers. So whatever they say goes. Like, that's your only outlook if you're not going to see cracks. That's the only option. Look at any of the science. Any of it. Any of it. Our own military says touch DNA is pseudoscience. So why is there such faith in this DNA? Our own military says it's unreliable and it's a pseudoscience.
Yeah, but a lot of people believe they have a lot more they're going to bring up in trial that's going to confirm all of these things.
Subjective hope.
Yeah.
Subjective hope. Not objective science theory, hypothesis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Objectivity takes the people out of it. Means that badge, a police officer's badge, is subjectivity. Humans are flawed. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a badge. You're flawed. All of us. We're wrong more than we're right. So you take the human element out of it. You should not believe a cop just because they're wearing a badge. You're going to forever be let down the rest of your life. You should not believe a judge because they're wearing a robe. You're going to forever be let down the rest of your life. You shouldn't believe a prosecutor. You shouldn't believe a defense attorney. You shouldn't believe any of these people because they're all humans and they're flawed. So you stick with the science. What is the science saying in this case? Every single piece of science that we've looked into in this case has holes in it, all over it. The DNA, highly questionable. The only three people that I've seen talk on the DNA evidence in this case, all doubt. There is major doubt around it. So why are we supposed to believe the prosecutor and the police over these experts that are actually objective in this case? Police are not. The police have a buy-in into this case. The prosecutor has a buy-in into this case. It benefits his career to get a close rate. Okay, that should make you already believe him less. The police are going to be commended if they get the bad guy, right? That should already make you believe them less. Not that they're untrustworthy, just that they have a personal buy-in into this case, meaning that you should doubt that information by looking at it objectively and scientifically.
That's why we have a court of law.
Correct.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. But for us looking into it, we're going to look into it before it gets to the court of law.
Right.
So looking at it from that point of view, there are all these cracks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah. Every piece we've looked into, there's holes, there's cracks. There are.
In all of it.
They're glaringly obvious to me. I don't know why they're not to other people. I don't know. I don't share your experience, I guess.
I just hope, and I do hope, you guys, I really hope Bryan Kohberger is guilty, because if he's not, what a terrifying outcome. I know how many times I've said this, but if he's not guilty, and if this police department and these prosecutors and everyone who was involved in this fudged this in a way where they're more worried about correcting their mistake than they are about finding the bad guy. That means we have a maniac on the loose. We have a potential fifth victim, and we still have our public, our people out there at risk of being murdered with a knife
And
or other.
And like a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. It's a terrifying situation. So anybody out there that is swearing on his guilt, I think this is a serious enough matter that you should dig into the science. Stop believing people. I don't ever want anyone to believe me. I think if we have people who watch us, don't believe me. You're doing Thought Riot a disservice by just believing me. I am full of it. I'm an alien. I'm crazy, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Do not believe me. Just use the information you hear from Thought Riot Podcast as a carrot to go dig deeper, verify everything we say.
Yep.
Who knows what I'm saying? Who knows where I got my information? Who knows where I got my science?
Yeah, he just makes it up as he goes.
I do, and I am good at that.
He is good at that.
I am. I practice every day in the mirror for 5 minutes. If you want a sales tip, that's the best tip you could have. Period. If you want to be a salesperson, you stand in front of a mirror and talk to yourself and sell to yourself until you're comfortable. It doesn't feel weird anymore. And then you do it in front of somebody else.
It's like speech class in college all over again.
Not speech class, sales class.
Yeah, speech class was traumatizing though, but helpful.
Yeah, I speak with my body too much. I would probably fail speech class because I'm too animated. Speech class is very
What? They didn't tell us to be like.
I was in speech and I was told not to animate in this way. I was actually told to hold on to the podium because they're losing my points because I'm using my body language.
You're flailing too much.
I do. Look, I just did it again unintentionally. I can't help it. I cannot help it.
You're flailing around too much. We can't understand you.
Yeah, I can't help it. I just talk with my hands and body, my whole body. All right. Who needs a workout?
Yeah. Speech class was traumatic, man.
Why?
What do you mean, why? I don't like public speaking.
What?
It's terrifying.
You're just in a class.
I know, it was terrifying. I didn't even
Did you ever take drama?
No.
Oh, dude, I loved those kinds of classes. I took drama because it was an easy A, and the teacher was like,
okay, English lit
out there, bro.
English
and
lit.
She was super cool.
History, art class, those were my easy A's.
See, I took woodworking,
drama, I
drama,
did take that.
and debate, surf class.
That's where I got this scar actually on my wrist, was from woodworking, because I had a piece of sheet metal stab into my wrist and then it folded under and it made the skin fold under and it didn't bleed. It just was a gaping hole with no blood, so I could see straight into my wrist.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then I went to the nurse's office and she grabbed my wrist and she pulled it and then the skin flipped back under and it started bleeding.
Yeah. Because the pressure. Yeah.
It was so weird.
Yeah. Road rash is kind of like that. When you get really, really bad road rash, it doesn't actually bleed. You got like a bunch of rocks and dirt and stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Public speaking was hard.
That's so strange because for me, that was like, just put me in front of people. I'm good, man.
Speech class worked though. It helped me a lot because
I would have fainted too. I'm dead serious.
I didn't even know how scared I was of it until I was up there talking in front of everybody and they're staring at me and my whole body was like convulsing the whole time. And I was like, ugh, like just stop. Just stop. Like, what is going on? Stop. Like I was completely out of control of my body.
Yeah.
And so she told me to jump around and like flail my arms basically and like or do jumping jacks or something to get the excess nerves out, and it works. Like if you just do exercise or something before you go on stage.
Yeah, maybe.
It does work.
I remember being nervous at times, but I think there was maybe 2 times where I was nervous, and one of them was I had to speak in front of the whole school and teachers and everything, and that made me nervous. But I just have a technique that I use when I get nervous, and I'll get off the stage with the microphone and just walk around people.
Watch it, Malia. Brendan might give you a black eye with those flailing arms.
I don't. I don't want you to believe me. Oh, so when we argue, so we talked about this the other day, that one of the arguments that people use in our comments is they always say like, "Oh my gosh, you have to let her have her own opinion."
Okay.
That's such a I would be so offended if when we were arguing, you just gave up and agreed with me. I can't think of anything more offensive than that.
What? I do that sometimes though.
No, you don't.
No, I don't actually agree with you.
I don't want people to agree with me.
I
That's
just say
so offensive.
I just say, okay, all right. Like I'm just done. I guess if you could say okay is agreeing, but I'm not really agreeing with you.
I can't think of anything more offensive.
Yeah, but you change my opinion for real sometimes.
Yeah, but not like that. It's because we've worked through a problem together. So if you're bought into the conversation, because you've changed my opinion too, but if we're bought into it, then we're working through the problem together and come to a conclusion together. But like if I was talking to someone and I could tell that for whatever reason they were uncomfortable and they were just like, oh yeah, now I get what you're saying, I agree with you, I can't think of anything more offensive than that.
Why would you be offended? Like that's kind of dramatic.
Because I'm a debater and I want to have a conversation with someone and I want to work through problems verbally with people.
Yeah, but some people don't want to
agree with me. I want to work through problems together.
Yeah, but what if that person doesn't want to? So they're just like, oh yeah, okay, you're right. And they just want to leave.
Then I'll chase them. I'll just run after them and continue talking.
Yeah, sometimes he's just extra and he talks a lot. So, yeah. But I feel like I get my opinions out. It just might take me a minute because he's flapping his lips so much.
Yeah. I know. Dude, I'm the first one to tell you my flaws. I am that. Yeah, you're right. I did say nothing can offend me, but that is something that could offend me. And I just realized that like 3 or 4 days ago when someone was like trying to come sideways at me. And they said something along the lines of like, why can't you just let her have her own opinions? Why do you need her to agree with you? And I was like, ew, I do not want people to agree with me. How gross.
Yeah, but you'll also debate your opinion to the death.
If I feel strongly in it, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
What about it? But that's not getting someone to agree with me. That's trying to work through a problem. And for whatever reason, if I'm really argumentative in that topic, that means I probably thought about that topic a lot.
Yeah, but if you're trying to work through a problem, is it okay if at the end of working through the problem, neither one of you agree at all?
Yeah, duh.
Okay. So I'm curious.
My problem is if
You
somebody
saying
gives
working through-
in and agrees for the sake of agreeing.
Yeah. So working through a problem, that's a weird way to put it for me.
Yeah, I find comfort in the disagreement.
Yeah, you want to debate, not just work through a problem. You want to debate. That's my point.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not a strong debater, so maybe that's why people get that vibe, because I'm not as strong of a debater as you. I like the free form conversation, like just letting it go where it may lead, bouncing ideas off of each other, and you want to debate. So you try to.
I don't want to debate. It just happens, okay? It just happens. Yeah, so I saw somebody ask about the Bill Thompson email hack.
What?
Yeah, we're gonna have to hold off on that because somebody sent me an email, all right, and they I was about to say that happy. So somebody sent me an email and they attached 2 links. And it talks about Bill Thompson's email being hacked. But what it was really referencing to is something in the past where he was the prosecutor of somebody that was part of the prosecution team, and he did something dirty and it had something to do with an abuse of funds, and he faxed something over to Bill Thompson, and Bill Thompson mistakenly used the term that faxing, that guy hacked the systems in the prosecutor's office. One, that can't happen from a fax, okay? And once I started looking further into it, yeah.
Fax machine got
Oh
hacked.
gosh, I know. But I had created the thumbnail when I was like researching more into it, and I started really searching, and I was like, "Ugh, dude, this is not current. This is not anything." So yeah, I apologize for that, you guys. I should have hopped on there and changed it, but that is the length of the hack. But it's an interesting story and I want to dig into it because I actually think there could be some weird stuff going on there. I'm just not I'm just I don't think it was an eFax. I thought that too. But the reason why I don't think it was an eFax is because the guy had a physical copy and they were using that against him in the case. However, but the eFaxes are interesting. I wonder if I could hack if it can be hacked through an eFax, because normally an eFax goes into an electronic fax bucket, right? And it's almost like the trash can on a computer desktop, where if something's in the trash, it doesn't have access to anything else on the system. But oh, I do have one more thing to show you guys though. But it's sitting in the system but not access to the rest of the system. So I'm not sure. I'll have to play with it and see if I can hack an eFax.
You're gonna try to hack a eFax?
Yeah. Why not? But I wanted to give a shout out to Heather for just always being like cilantro. And I wanted to show this video because we had talked about hang on, you guys.
Brendan's just very passionate. That's something I've had to learn with him, is that it does seem like he's offended sometimes when I'm disagreeing with him, and I take it personally sometimes. But
Bro, I'm never offended.
But a lot of times he is just super, super passionate about what he's saying and gets offended that I think he's offended.
Oh no, there's music.
What is this?
We were talking about that release date, and we said that if we could find it, that we would watch it. Remember the but there's background music.
Okay,
so
go forward a little, see if
it's all right. I muted it. Okay, so this is on. I just want to give credit where it's due, but I don't want to get hit with the background music. So, what is that? Strange Suspicion. So this is on Strange Suspicion. Check it out. Shout out to Heather for sending this over. But we heard about the Coburger release date, right? And I don't know how much there is to this, but it's interesting the fact that we were able to find it. Heather found it and shared it on Discord. So I'm gonna play it here. But apparently, this is some kind of inmate internal ID and document. And it says released in 184 days, facility location, Moscow, Idaho, Latah County Jail, male, date of birth 11/21/94, release date 01/27/24. Is this just standard protocol that when somebody gets arrested, they book it for just after a year? I don't know, but interesting. Yeah, I think this video is cool, and I really wish I could play it, but there's background music, you guys, and there's a whole other issue that comes into play when there's background music. So if there's anything with background music, we just don't play it because I don't have a membership to one of the background music programs. What is it called? I forget the main one. But
Epidemic?
yes, that is it. I don't have an Epidemic membership.
And no, we don't really. I mean, we have watched our show back, but only like parts of it, not the whole thing together. I can't watch myself for too long. I get annoyed with myself.
I don't. I watch myself sometimes. I watch myself a lot. I just do 5 minutes in front of the mirror every day.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Rolo, but yeah. Definitely tag us in whatever video you do. We'll love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. We give shout outs where we can. I try really hard to shout people out. We shout out everybody, whether you have a similar opinion, whether you don't have a similar opinion, it doesn't matter. We appreciate everybody, and that's one of the main things that we made a commitment to ourselves on when we decided to start making content, is that we're going to shout out all content creators and support the community, not the idea, right? So she's actually the unalive.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Plumber said we should go over things we want to debate before the show, so we know there's a point that we want to debate and it doesn't feel like you're stepping on one another's toes. I mean,
I don't get offended, and I think that would take away from the unscripted nature of the show.
I do think that, but maybe there could be specific shows at some point in the future that are debate shows or something, you know?
Yeah, I've thrown my hat in the ring. If anybody out there wants to debate me, you guys haven't seen me with my training wheels off yet. Malia probably had. Well, you probably have, but everything that we've had on this channel has literally been just conversation. Wait till I'm in a debate atmosphere.
Your true toxicity and abuse is gonna shine.
It is.
Plumber also said we should have abuse. What are they called?
Abuse hotline?
No.
That would be so funny. I should make our logo have the abuse hotline number.
No, that's a terrible idea. That's a horrible idea. No, like a meter on each side, so it signals who's being the most abusive
Oh, that'd be good.
for a membership or like
Yeah.
a members stream maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, you
There,
need a mediator in a debate.
there's too many social standards at play with stuff like that, though. I already know the outcome. I'll always be the aggressor, and that's okay. That's fine. That's just how society looks at it. I am the bad cop anyways. Look, I'm so angry looking at you.
Eyes look crossed.
My eyes look crossed?
Slightly. You look a little cross-eyed in that picture.
Do they?
A little bit. That's just how it comes across to me.
I'm just looking down at you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. I'm thinking about all the abusive things I do.
You look confused.
I am confused by those horns.
They suit him very well.
I know.
It looks great.
Dude, he is the bad Santa. I'm telling you. The bad Santa.
No, he looks like he's from Narnia. The goat guy.
Yeah, he does.
What are you hiding beneath those pants, Milton?
Dude, but look at his
You got
cheeks.
hooves?
His cheeks really look rosy. Like he's for real trying to be a Santa.
Yeah. They are pretty rosy.
Seriously.
Rosacea.
Do you think he did one of these things like, all right, good picture? You know?
Pinched
like
his
a pep
cheeks. He pinched his cheeks. You don't slap your cheeks.
Yeah, when you're like trying to hype yourself up. Yeah.
That's like a man thing.
I don't think so.
Women pinch their cheeks.
Really?
That was like I saw that one time in like a vintage video about a girl like getting ready or something, and she pinched her cheeks to make them red.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I remember that feeling, you guys, of feeling weird about hearing my own voice or watching myself was second grade. I remember in second grade, we had to do something in front of a camera, and that was the only time I can remember where I was like, wait, I sound like that? And it made me feel kind of like weird or awkward or whatever. And then I went home and started recording myself every day.
What?
Yeah. I did.
So CH requested us to play something real quick. There's something you should play only 1 minute to minute 46 of Colleen Fitzpatrick on grayish hues this past week. She is the first person to solve a case with IgG.
What is it? Say that one more time.
Colleen Fitzpatrick on the channel grayish hues.
Okay.
At 1 minute 46 or something. I'm confused. CH.
Grayish hues?
You should type the timestamp. Yeah, grayish hues. Can you see it?
I just come across as an old-fashioned a-hole.
Is that how grayish hues? I've seen that channel before. I don't think
do.
that's how it's spelled.
You're right.
Oh my gosh.
Except I'm 29.
Look at the correction.
What's grayish hues?
I think it's spelled wrong. Wait, is it that? I don't think it's that.
What? That would be hilarious if we call our call-in number the abuse hotline. That would be great. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't find it. I don't know what grayish hue. Oh, gray. So gray hues? Okay. And then it's with who?
Colleen something?
Colonial Parkway?
No, Colleen Fitzpatrick.
Okay, and it was recent?
I guess the past week.
Oh wait, is it live or something?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, let me see.
Oh, there it is. DNA expert joins us.
Where?
It is live.
Where?
Right, this one. 5 days ago on live. Are you on live? Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. At what time?
Let me see if CH answered.
46?
Minute 46.
Okay.
Like the first minute and 46 seconds? Or at 1 minute and 46?
Perhaps using
What?
what's
You're
that
at
other
44 minutes,
agency that
Brendan.
allows
No.
My Heritage.
Yeah, MyHeritage allows raw data upload.
I'm at
And you can,
45:30.
So well, how would that would that cause a
What
46.
talking about it?
no, but the thing is they keep that's been out there, but here's the thing is it illegal or is it just sort of like, hey man, these guys came up with a crazy this is a lead, it still matched the DNA, right?
No, guys, look, doing that is not, it's not illegal.
It's just
It's
sort
not
of
illegal. It's more disruptive than illegal. It's more, ethics than legalities. So, and it's a play, here's the deal is, the law enforcement, they make all the rules, the laws that we all obey, whatever. Okay, something's legal, something not. But the people that are really running the show and have those databases, they're not in the legal profession. They're companies that have that control the terms of service. So if somebody decides to violate the terms of service, you can't do anything because how can you do anything? You can't arrest them for somebody for or take legal action because they violated the terms of service.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's
So
a
the
civil
problem-
issue there, maybe, right? Like
Yeah. Right. You have a all the legal stuff. Don't do this. Don't kill anybody. Don't, ram your car into your neighbor, because you don't like him. Don't shoot him. All that stuff is legal. Fine. But if you upload incorrectly, let's say to GEDmatch outside of the terms of service, you violate those terms of service. Oh, well.
That's what we've
What are
been
you going to
saying.
do?
Yeah.
It's all
and what's
policy.
interesting to me is like all you're
Policy
doing,
isn't law.
you've really kind of made me see it that way over the years. It's a lead, but obviously it's one of the greatest leads in the history of mankind, but it's a lead, right? So you're giving it to the police officer, then they have to go out, the detectives, whatever, and they go around and they have to verify, does this make sense? Where was this person? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then one of the last things they do is probably go collect a sample surreptitiously in a garbage can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like we did with Roxanne Wood, we had Patrick Gillum on our radar. We turned his name in, whatever we did. Okay. There's Patrick. He had 2 brothers. The other brothers were really okay guys. This one had been just out of prison.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been our whole point this whole time, including the interim policy.
Yeah.
It is a policy. It is not a law. Meaning, if they violate that, if they violate the policies of the company, oh well.
Yeah. No, exactly. It sticks with this idea that like that interim policy means something. Look, there are people out there that follow rules and guidelines, okay? And then there are people like me who don't and are always walking the line.
Like you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I have to know where the line is. I'm not saying I'm some crazy BA guy that is like constantly pushing it to the maximum. But
Nobody ever said that.
I have to know where the line is so I know where I can go. If you give me paperwork like the interim and say, look, this is not the law, this is just a suggestion, I promise you I won't even read it. I will throw it away because it doesn't matter. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, give me what I can and can't do, not what you're suggesting I do. Tell me where the line is so I know what I can do and what I can't do. Don't give me all this other gray information. I just don't care. You know?
Yeah, that's why the FBI went to Vargas's house when she outed their practice of not following policies, of violating policies.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, oh, well, because I thought that when I was sitting here listening to it, I was like, oh, yeah, I guess, oh, well, right? It's so that not important.
Yeah.
Because what these companies could do is stop police. Police don't have rights into their systems.
They could
shut it down. Period. Shut it down.
I mean, you could say it's unconstitutional, like for real. And that's what Bicka Barlow is arguing, is that this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's illegal search and seizure of people's private information.
Yeah.
So while there's no laws, I mean, it's gray area right now. So just like fog data science, it's all gray area right now.
Does Gray Hughes wear one of those hats that have hair in it? I'm being serious. I'm not even trying to joke. Not a toupee, but you know how they have those visors that have hair in them?
No.
What? You've never seen those visors with hair in them?
No.
I'm not even trying to be mean. I'm genuinely wondering.
So mean.
No, I'm being serious.
How could you accuse him of that?
I'm asking because it looks like it, because it doesn't match his beard color. I think you're being mean. What?
You gotta share it.
Share what?
Share it.
Why? Here they're trying to make it look
My
like
eyes
really
are
good.
watering.
I think he could be.
Looks like a hedgehog on that.
I'm totally
His
not
head.
trying to be mean. Look, that could be his hair. I'm telling you. That's why it reminded me of it, because the
No.
two-tone. And I really wasn't trying to be mean. I genuinely was curious.
Yeah, but his sideburns are gray.
No, he doesn't have any sideburns.
There's little gray sideburns.
But then he's got a full head of hair. That's why it made me think of that. Like, okay, if I shave all my head and put one of those hats on, that's how it looks.
Or he just left a little flap of gray here.
No way. You can get one with a bun?
No, it's just a regular
No.
visor.
Fake man bun hat. That's what it's called.
Oh.
Have a realistic man bun without actually having a man bun. Just toss it on this man bun Billy Bob hat and let the good times roll.
What?
I want one.
To wear one?
It sold me.
Now you have to wear one. Come on with one of the frosted tip hedgehog looking ones. Or a man bun. The hedgehog looking ones are funnier.
I need to get my power stash back.
Nobody can see that. So ridiculous.
But anyways, sorry. That's kind of close to the mic. Sorry. I never sent the invite for our Patreon for
anything, you mean?
our Discord. Yes, here, before I forget, you guys. So Discord, quick rundown on Discord. I'm going to try and make it as quick as I can. Discord is a free system where you're not going to, there is no tiers, there is no anything. It's just a place for us to continue the conversation with people from this chat. It's essentially a chat that's running all the time. And you can include like investigation information, details. We can chat, we can do all kinds of things on there. So we have a lot of fun in there. One of the benefits of that too is that we put alerts in there. So if you don't want to depend on YouTube, then that's where you go. Now, one other membership posting, that is the YouTube membership, where we do have a few membership only or members only videos on there. And the only way to view them is either from Patreon membership or the YouTube membership.
Why don't you have all of these pasted into a note so you can easy access
I
them?
just don't do that. That sounds like a lot of work.
Thanks, Miss Kelly, and have a good day, Sarah. And by the way, CH, thanks for recommending that. Shout out to CH.
Yes.
It's good to know that the people within the field are not good to know. It's bad to know. It's crappy to know.
And I
But
really meant
still
that.
good information to know that that's how they look at it.
Yeah. And if Gray Hughes watches this, I really meant that with like best intentions. I wasn't trying to.
What
poke
calling
fun.
out somebody's toupee is never like
For a man, that doesn't matter.
it's never taken as good intended. You may have meant it with good intentions, but
What?
like it's like calling out a woman's age.
What's wrong with that?
It's just known to be a no-no.
Okay, well,
You just don't have social awareness.
yeah. That comes with the package, okay? So then if that social awareness isn't there, then I'm telling you my intent. Which is why I mansplain. If I tell you my intent, then nobody has to guess. Like, oh wait, was he meaning that in a jerk way? No, I just told you I wasn't.
Yeah.
I ask a girl her age. And I usually say, look, it's okay. Look, women are like fine wine. They get better with age, okay? So how old are you?
Is that your pickup line?
No, that's my how to ask a woman her age line.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the pregnant one's a big no-no.
Okay, the
Are you
pregnant one, I don't
pregnant?
ever do that. I don't ever do that because I have literally done it and got it wrong.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, Rabbit says it's just plain rude. Well, I think people like me
Are just plain rude.
Duh.
Yeah, we've all said something like that before, dude. It's a human thing.
What?
Human curiosity. You've asked something that ended up being rude to the other person. Like one
Yeah.
time I saw some little kid and I was like, "Oh, she's so cute." It's a boy. Oh. So now I don't say he or she. I'm just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
they're so cute."
Yeah.
Cuz I never know when I'm going to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
AR has a natural man bun hat.
Yeah, AR's hair's long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely don't ask the pregnancy question. I just don't. Because I've asked and have been wrong, and not even in like the funny way where she wasn't pregnant, but in a way, gosh, I forget. I was so young, but I remember it really bothered me because gosh, what was it? I think the baby had passed and they were just waiting to take it out. And I asked and I was like, how am I supposed to know that? Like I had no idea. Now I just never want to ask ever. So I just don't ask ever. I don't ever even I just pretend like a woman's not pregnant.
Yeah, it's just none of your business.
Yeah.
What's going on in her womb?
Yeah.
It's none of your business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Because that was like, I was like, oh no, that's so bad. And like that's nobody would know. And you're probably walking around being asked all the
That's
time.
super sad.
Yeah.
Super sad. I did this one time and I was staying with my friend in her dorm in Chicago. I went to go stay with her to go to a concert that weekend in Chicago, and I was super annoyed with her because she was being just really, really annoying. Like, I don't know what was going on. I can't even remember now, but she was doing things that were just really bothering
Oh no,
me.
you were
And
trash talking her and you sent it to her.
Yes, I meant to send it to one of my other friends, and it went to her, and I was sleeping on the couch, and she came out of her room. She's like, Malia, what is this? And I was like, I explained it away somehow. I don't remember.
That's why I just don't trash talk nobody ever.
I don't do it very often.
Yeah.
There's only very certain people.
That's how you know that I legitimately didn't mean that bad, because I don't trash talk.
No,
people,
you don't.
ever.
I've tried to trash talk somebody with him before, even somebody we don't even know, and you're like not interested.
Why are you talking bad about them? Yeah.
It's very specific people for me. Like I like to see, the good and beauty in everyone, but there's very certain people that irk me enough that I could trash talk them.
Yeah. All right, you guys, that is the show tonight. We went real long, and that's okay because we had a good time doing it. And just remember that if you guys are on any of the podcast platforms, what are those platforms? We're talking about Spotify, we're talking about Apple, we're talking about Google, we're talking about Amazon, we're talking about any of the other podcast platforms. If you have a second to give us a rating, it goes a really long way. Even if you watch us on YouTube, if you hop over to any of these podcast platforms and give us a rating, it just helps us expand and get bigger. And we're working towards the point of being full-time. I'm hoping on Sunday we will finally have the huge space up and running to where we will be an actual show and like show quality. Yeah, we appreciate all of you for being here. Make sure you add us on all the social medias. It is /Thought Riot Podcast, except for Twitter, which we posted in there. It is /Thought Riot Pod. This is us on Apple. You can find us under two different names. It's either The True Crime Talk Show, which is the show we're on now, or you can find us on here, which is the original Thought Riot Podcast, the True Crime and Criminal Culture Podcast. We're talking about crime statistics, the criminal elements and or nature of society, and how it relates to true crime. So check it out on there, and we will be back here tomorrow. And we appreciate all of you.
Yeah, AR, I think he was just saying your hair's long and natural, and like because the sides are shaved, it's almost like a hat of hair. It wasn't anything bad at all. Just
Where,
that
is AR
it's
in here?
because we were literally looking at like man bun hats that are fake and visors that
Yeah, it's
have
right
fake
here.
hair.
Look, AR has a natural man bun hat.
Yeah, saying it's like it's a
Your
real.
hair's long and natural.
Yeah, your hair's natural. It's not a fake hat. But your sides are shaved, so I'm assuming it was kind of like the hair's long on top and not on the side, so it almost looks like a hat. But your hair's awesome.
It
Your
is.
hair's super cool. So
It is, and it's such a commitment. It takes so long to get there. I don't know how long
Yeah.
I'm gonna grow my hair out, but I'm growing it. I'm gonna grow out my beard and hair. I guess maybe I'll grow out my beard till it touches my chest, and then I'm shaving everything.
he said including his eyebrows.
I am. Yep. Everything.
Are you gonna draw them back on in colors?
No. Nope. I'm gonna run a test. Are my sales gonna go up when I shave everything?
No.
Why? I think they will.
Maybe because people
are gonna
feel
assume the
bad for
worst.
you.
Yeah.
People are gonna feel bad for you.
People are gonna assume the worst, and I'm never gonna mention it. Like, I'm not gonna ever say anything about why I'm like that. And I'm just gonna see if it goes up, because people naturally draw conclusions and assumptions.
Draw them on.
That's the assumption I think people might make, but I'm curious to see. I'm just constantly doing like social tests.
Are you being serious?
Yes.
Why would you do that?
Why wouldn't you is the real question. All I can think is benefits. I
Okay.
can't think of any negatives. Science is a party. all right?
Everyone's gonna see how small your head is.
Yeah. Experiments.
How tiny it is.
All right, you guys, we appreciate all of you. And
Yes.
to all of you, a good night.
Yes. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for having fun with us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow
Tomorrow.
at 9 p.m. Central. Be here.
See
And,
ya.
Yeah, bye.